Chapter 1176. Miss Bai's face was ashen as she hollered, "Nonsense. Yin Yang, you're the demon. You came to the Lei family and annihilated an entire family, revealing the demon race's savage nature. Today, we shall enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and annihilate this villain." Following her howl, 7 to 8 silhouettes leaped over and attacked Yin Yang in unison without a word. At the same time, Miss Bai let out a loud cry as a jade-green vine appeared in her palm. There were 7 to 8 unusually green leaves on it as she tossed them towards Yin Yang. Miss Bai was not an ordinary demon, but a plant demon that was even rarer than the Golden Condor King. Miss Bai's first move was a killing move. As soon as the vine went into the air, it suddenly turned into a sky full of green leaves that fell down, covering an area of 1,000 feet. It was a large area of effect attack. Yin Yang was surprised, but he did not slow down. He raised the divine edge in his hand, the merciless saber and the merciless Dao were executed. Countless vines and branches fell from the sky as the dense saber glint flew over. Yin Yang was also retreating quickly, obviously trying to escape from the other party's attack range. Yin Yang had been a formidable foe for a long time. He had to think of defeat before thinking of victory. Before he understood the other party's background, he had to be careful and not lose. There was most likely something fishy about the other party's attack range. It was better to observe the situation first before making further plans. The moment Yin Yang responded to the attack, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. The demon race? How could there be the demon race in the bound of universe's human territory? Moreover, it was not just 1 or 2 of them. The people who surrounded him were all from the demon race, and their combat power was not ordinary either. Just thinking about it was frightening. As the saying goes, one can see the big picture from the small clues. With such a large group of monster clan lurking here, with Miss Bai's cultivation and ability, she did not hesitate to spend so many years to set up a trap and deliberately make friends with Lei Dongtian. If one were to say that there was no big scheme behind it, it would not make sense. Moreover, although Miss Bai's strength was the strongest among all the demon clan members, since she had personally come here and used herself as bait, it could be concluded that she was definitely not the leader. In other words, there was at least a mastermind behind Miss Bai. Then, how high would the identity of the mastermind be? How strong would he be? What exactly were they plotting? Yin Yang's saber danced as he defended himself against the 8 demons' attacks. While he was careful, his thoughts were running wild. The Lei family returned to the family 3 years ago and changed from a third-rate family to a descendant of the Sacred Heart Palace's great elder Lei Qianli's favor and inheritance. According to Lei Dongtian, this Miss Bai came here less than 3 years ago. Her true identity is a demon. It's not difficult to tell from her words and actions that she has ulterior motives towards Lei Dongtian and the Lei family. Moreover, there's obviously someone higher up behind her. She's just someone who follows orders. The Sacred Heart Palace's great elder, Miss Bai, the demon race, could there be any connection between these 3? If we include the Sacred Heart Palace's master Zhan Wufei's secret mission, the Sacred Heart Palace's spies, and the recent frequent actions of the demon race, could there be other mysteries behind all of these? Although everything is complicated and messy, it's not impossible to sort them out. Among these, Yin Yang was deep in thought, summarizing all the information he had on hand and sorting out the crux of the matter. Should I kill all these demons? It's not appropriate. Yin Yang had a plan in mind. With his current cultivation base, Miss Bai and the other demons' combat power was not ordinary, but it was nothing to Yin Yang. If he really went all out, he could kill all of them in 100 breaths' time. However, if he really did so, all the clues would be cut off and it would be difficult to continue. I have to think of a way. The 8 demons closed in on Yin Yang with a series of killer moves, wanting nothing more than to kill Yin Yang. Yin Yang kept retreating. It looked like he was surrounded by danger, constantly walking between life and death, but in fact, he was at ease. It looked dangerous, but he was actually safe. At the moment when the fight was about to end, Miss Bai's jade-like hand flew over like a butterfly and met Yun Yang's palm with a loud bang. Yun Yang grunted and a trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. He staggered backward and was almost dismembered by the demons when he lost his balance. Seeing this, Miss Bai's heart was at ease. She spun around and shouted, "Go again. Those who kill him will be rewarded handsomely." Through the exchange of blows just now, she could clearly judge that although sect leader Yun's cultivation was not low and had already reached the level of a third-grade Saint King, he was still a notch lower than her who was at the peak of a third-grade Saint King. Judging from the result of their exchange, not only did she have an easy time, she had also injured her opponent and his combat power was no longer at its peak. Following Miss Bai's command, the other 7 people howled in unison, their swords and sabers falling down, their eyes filled with murderous intent. Yun Yang seemed to be in a precarious situation as he struggled and dodged with all his might, putting up a stubborn resistance. Even though he struggled and dodged with all his might, streaks of blood continued to fly and he could no longer avoid them completely like before. Boom, 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 after a dozen consecutive clashes, Yun Yang howled in agony as he was flung away like a kite with its string snapped. However, Miss Bai was already a step ahead of him and had arrived at the other end of Yun Yang. With a loud bang, it was another exchange of blows. Yun Yang tried his best to block it but heard a crack as if his entire arm had been broken. However, he straightened himself in mid-air and strangely turned in another direction, fleeing for his life towards the open space. In a flash, he had already gone 400 to 500 feet away. It seemed to be some kind of arcane skill that stimulated his life force, and he was determined to fight. Miss Bai was, of course, unwilling to let Yun Yang escape, but she had been thrown to the other side by Yun Yang's near-death experience, unable to move immediately. She hollered, "This rascal is already severely injured. He can't run far. Go after him, don't let him escape." The 7 demons obeyed and moved, turning into streaks of shadows in an instant, giving chase at lightning speed. Yun Yang sprinted swiftly, displaying his extraordinary and ever-changing movement skills and his unpredictability. Even when there were 8 silhouettes trailing behind him, he could always find a sliver of hope and escape from the most impossible situation with his slippery skills. This infuriated the few people behind him so much that they almost spat blood. Just as they were about to catch him, he turned and ran again. Just as they were about to kill him, he slipped away again. Are UAF * King Loach? Chapter 1177. Miss Bai and the rest of the group of 8 pursued Yun Yang all the way. Seeing that Yun Yang's injuries were getting more and more severe, they became more desperate and refused to give up. Even when he was coughing up blood, he could still escape. The chase went on for a good half an hour before it came to an end as Yun Yang darted into a dense forest with a swoosh. All the demons could hear was a rustling sound as it disappeared into the distance. Then, there was no more sound. Of course, the demons would not give up just like that. They attacked in unison. With a loud bang, countless saber lights, sword shadows, palm strikes, and claws enveloped half of the dense forest, pulverizing countless trees within the attack range. It was a pity that other than some small animals and birds that were running for their lives, there was no other presence in the forest. It was as if Yun Yang had vanished into thin air the moment he entered the forest. Search. Miss Bai's face was ashen, her expression cold and her gaze fierce. Yun Yang is already on the brink of death. Although he has a chance to catch his breath, he can't have gone far. He must still be somewhere in this forest. Dig him out even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground today. Yes. Over the next 4 hours, the 8 demonic race experts had smashed the entire forest into smithereens. Every inch of the ground had been turned over at least 100 feet of space, but Yun Yang was nowhere to be found. Not even a trace of blood could be found. Miss Bai's gaze swept across the land that had been turned upside down and could no longer be called a forest. A look of admiration even appeared on her exquisite face. No wonder you were able to escape the Golden Condor King's pursuit for thousands of miles. This method of escaping is truly extraordinary. However, since we know that you're in this area, you can't escape death even if you turn into dust. That night, Miss Bai and the others stayed here and continued their search in 8 different directions. They searched inch by inch, not letting go of any suspicious spots. During this period of time, even a cat's meow would cause a huge commotion. It was obvious that they were determined to end Yun Yang's chances of survival. However, an entire day and night had passed and there was still no trace of Yun Yang, as if he no longer existed in this world. Miss Bai and the rest of the 8 of them were so tired that they stuck out their tongues. They looked at the dense forest in front of them. No, this place could no longer be considered a dense forest. Under the continuous destruction of the great forces, it had long been smashed into a barren desert. It had even expanded to nearly twice its original size. It was a completely barren land. However, all of them had looks of disbelief on their faces. How did this guy survive such a search and hide so well? This method of concealment was simply, previously, he was seriously injured, right? Did we severely injure him? It should be. Their voices were filled with uncertainty. Faced with the inexplicable reality, they all began to doubt themselves. Did they not hit him at all? Was he not injured at all? Or perhaps he was hiding some kind of miraculous movement speed secret technique and had long escaped from this area. Otherwise, the current situation would be too strange. Miss Bai's expression grew darker. As someone who had the most direct combat contact with Yun Yang, she was absolutely certain that Yun Yang had been severely injured previously. This was absolutely true. However, why could they not find him? That's the strange part. She had already been questioned twice in one day and one night. The higher-ups were infuriated as they continued to berate her. Has the murderer of the Lei family been killed? We're still pursuing him. Has he been killed? We're still pursuing him. We haven't confirmed it yet, she was scolded relentlessly. By Bingxian. Do you King want to die? Why do you have to force your father to swear? If you don't want to live, just say it. Miss Bai did not want to die at all, so she wanted to capture Yun Yang and kill him even more. However, the reality now was that she could not even see a trace of Yun Yang's shadow. After tormenting herself until dawn, Miss Bai, Bingxian, and her 7 subordinates gathered in the tent, exhausted, to brainstorm and discuss the next steps. Where has Yun Yang been hiding? All 8 of them could not figure it out. He looked like he was on the brink of death. Where could he be hiding? How could there be such a strange thing in this world? It was inexplicable, inconceivable, and incomprehensible. Just as they were puzzled, a faint wisp of cloud chi was already hidden in the tent they had set up temporarily. Did Yun Yang intentionally avoid the demon's search? Absolutely not. Yun Yang had transformed into his cloud form the moment he snuck into the forest and followed behind Miss Bai when the demons were searching for him. He had heard every single word of her questioning, including the 2 times she had questioned him. He had clearly seen Bai Bingxian take out a strange black, shuttle-shaped mystical crystal. After channeling mystical chi for some time, the tip of the shuttle gradually glowed. Then, Bai Bingxian began to report the current situation to the shuttle. She put it down after she was done. When the shuttle glowed again without warning, she channeled mystical chi into it again. An angry reprimanding voice could be heard. Have you found him now? Have you killed that child? A bunch of trash. Tell me, what else can you do? Bai Bingxian had been standing respectfully before the shuttle the entire time, accepting the reprimand. After the reprimand was done, she put it down and channeled mystical chi into it again to light it up. Then, she would either defend herself or report the new situation. This thing seems to be something good. Yin Yang's gaze glowed. It can actually transmit voice from 10,000 miles away, and it's not a one-time consumable item. However, after eavesdropping for a day and a night, they did not receive any valuable information. At least, the voice that came from the other end of the shuttle-shaped voice transmission was not Elder Lei's but an unfamiliar, low, slightly raspy voice. Each time this voice came, there was a faint demonic aura that lingered, indicating the fact that the other party belonged to the demon race. Bai Bingxian and the others expanded their search area to a radius of 2,000 miles. After searching for 5 consecutive days and nights without rest, they could not help but admit that they were at their wits' end. Once again, their efforts were futile. They could not catch him at all. There was a 99% chance that Yun Yang had already left. Bai Bingxian dared not hope that Yun Yang would die from his injuries. The chances of that happening were too slim, not even 1 in 10,000. Even if he could die without a sound, there should still be a corpse, blood stains, and other traces of evidence. However, no matter how dejected she was, it was useless. She still had to report the latest news to the higher-ups. It's confirmed that we can't catch Yun Yang. He might have escaped, or he might have died somewhere that we can't find. This time, the reprimand that came from the other end was unprecedentedly intense. Trash. Other than flirting, you have no other use. Yun Yang might be dead. Are you fooling me or fooling yourself? The combined strength of the 8 of you is so much higher than the other party, and you've even injured him severely, but you can still lose him. You've really set a precedent for the Demon Emperor family for hundreds of thousands of years. Bai Bingxian, you're a female, but you've got some F***king guts. Chapter 1178. Bai Bingxian's face turned ashen, and her entire body trembled. Her delicate face was filled with fear. She crawled on the ground, not daring to get up for a long time. The other 7 people's faces were also pale. Yun Yang was a little impressed. Who was the owner of this gloomy, hoarse voice? Other things aside, his eloquence when it came to scolding people was really good. After this round of scolding, there was no follow-up movement for a long time, and no one was really sent to heaven. However, Bai Bingxian and the others still did not dare to move, only looking at each other with pale faces. After a while, the shuttle-shaped communication jade pendant lit up again. A gloomy voice came from inside. Lei family. Lei Junming and the others, how far had they progressed in cultivating the art of blood droplet before they died? Bai Bingxian answered nervously. Lei Junming's progress in the art of blood droplet was amazing. Before he died, he had already cultivated this cultivation method to the bottleneck of the 2nd level Saint King. He was only 1 step away from breaking through to the 2nd level. The others who advanced faster have also cultivated to the beginner level of the 1st level Saint King. There are a total of 11 people in the Lei family, all of whom have reached the level of Saint King. As for the other juniors of the Lei family, there are 7 people whose cultivation base has reached the level of Saint King and more than 30 people who have reached the level of honor. However, this subordinate has confirmed again and again that these people have all. The gloomy voice in the jade pendant was filled with unconcealable anger, not a single one was left. Damn Yun Yang. There was another moment of silence on the other side. By the time it lit up again, the gloomy voice had already become a little dispirited. Tomorrow, the few of you, go to the Lei clan's main residence, and dig down 99 feet to see if there's anything strange. If there is, bring it back. Yes. If there is none, the voice repeated twice, then sighed and said, let's just directly sink the Lei clan head's residence. Yes. The next moment, the diamond-shaped communication jade pendant dimmed again, but this time, it did not light up even after a long time. However, the expressions of Bai Bingxian and the others were obviously relaxed. Some of the burly men even meowed happily a few times. Are they all wercats? As the saying went, one small clue would reveal the general trend. Comparing the current situation, especially recalling the cat-headed man who had fought Owlhead previously, Yun Yang had a pretty good idea. Look closely at that Bai Bingxian. She's walking like a cat, and her movements are somewhat cat-like. But the other 5 men and 2 women don't look like it. If it wasn't for the cat meowing, it's hard to imagine. A cat. How can it be so big and burly? Perhaps today would be the day to find out. However, what was hidden beneath the main residence of the Lei family? It could not be the Thunder Seal, nor could it be something that the Lei family knew about. Then, what could it be? When the group arrived at the Lei residence, they effortlessly herded all the surviving members of the Lei family to the backyard of the mansion. Yin Yang watched coldly from the air, having no intention of intervening at all. If Bai Bingxian and the rest had wanted to kill these people, Yin Yang might have intervened, but these cat demons did not seem to have such a resolute intention. Yin Yang was rather surprised. After all, if they were not of the same race, their intentions would definitely be different. Even if the demons really wanted to kill them to keep the secret, it would not be too surprising. Seeing that there were no outsiders around, the 8 of them no longer hesitated and attacked at the same time. The 8 of them attacked in unison, their strength converging into one. The might of their attacks could be said to be world-shaking. With a loud whoosh, the main residence of the Lei family was sent flying into the sky. Then, following the force of the attack, it flew far into the distance. The main residence of the Lei family flew away, but the ground remained flat. Even if the craftsman had done it intentionally, it might not have been as smooth. Do it 1 foot at a time. Only 99 feet underground. You can't do it any less, and you can't do it any more. You must not make any mistakes. Do you understand? Bai Bingxian commanded. Obviously, this female cat was extremely cautious about this mission. This was the last chance to atone for their mistakes. If there were any more mistakes, they would be courting death. Yin Yang watched as the demons dug down 1 foot at a time. Only then did he realize that the main residence of the Lei family was actually a rare piece of land with good feng shui. Yin Yang was proficient in manifestation powers and could transform himself into the manifestation of heaven and earth. He was best at sensing the flow of heaven and earth's qi, so he knew a lot about the natural phenomena. Throughout the entire bound of universe, other than those places that had been sealed by almighty beings or those rare places with good feng shui, under normal circumstances, water would appear after digging 30 to 40 feet into the flat ground. However, the Lei clan's main residence had been dug to a depth of 70 to 80 zhang, and it was actually made of very dry and hard clay. It was clearly a stabilizing layout in the feng shui theory. An excellent stabilizing layout had the miraculous effect of stabilizing the clan's fortune and protecting their descendants. However, this conclusion was a little shocking and hard to imagine. The bound of universe respected martial arts. Whoever had the bigger fist had the final say. Heaven's will was always on guard. Be it high-level cultivators or ordinary people, they would not simply commit crimes. As a result, the art of feng shui and the theory of seeking fortune and avoiding calamity were not taken seriously in the entire bound of universe. What right did the Lei family have to possess such a land with good feng shui? Yin Yang had long spread out his mental energy to confirm again and again that there were no restrictions set up here. And this understanding was also equivalent to another conclusion, which was that this land was naturally like this. But I don't feel that the feng shui of this place is that good. Yin Yang looked around from the sky. There were mountains to the north and rivers to the south. It was not bad, but both the east and the west were endless plains. Judging from the layout, it was nothing special. How could such a piece of land appear? In spite of this, the existence of this feng shui could explain why the Lei family, a third-rate family that had committed many crimes, had not been annihilated by heaven's will. Yin Yang's harvest of karmic qi this time was unprecedentedly rich. With Yin Yang's understanding of the bound of universe, such a sin value was rare. This feng shui formation was a very reasonable explanation. As Yin Yang pondered and pieced together what he knew, he suddenly heard a surprised meow from below. A strong man said happily, "There seems to be a formation." A formation? Expand the original excavation area. Don't damage the formation's base. Bai Bingxuan's voice turned urgent, but there was also joy in it. Since they had discovered the anomaly, it proved that their master was right. The chance to atone for their sins was not far away. Everyone had the same thought, so the 8 of them worked even harder. Miss Bai's usually spotless dress was now stained with dirt. With the cultivation base of the demons, despite the laborious work, they managed to clear a 500 feet wide pit in no time at all. At the bottom of the pit, on the neat and tidy surface, lines of blood-red light crisscrossed each other, forming a strange array diagram. And the lines of these array diagrams were all pointing upwards. Yun-yang was surprised. Looking closely, he realized that there was a different aura flowing in each line. There were at least 100 of such lines. This. Bai Bingxian was obviously more knowledgeable than Yun-yang and was more familiar with the Lei family in the past. This is obviously the aura of Lei family's Lei Junming and the others. These bloodlines, each should represent one person. Before she could finish her sentence, she seemed to have thought of something as her pretty face turned pale. As the saying went, one could understand the meaning of a melody. Yin-yang, who was in the sky, was shaken as well, as if he had understood something. The Lei family suddenly returned to the family. They acknowledged their ancestors and the cultivation method passed down by their ancestors. Everyone's improvement was tremendous, advancing by leaps and bounds. After returning to the family, the cultivation methods of the past were all abandoned. Even the god's bone cultivation method that was regarded as a secret was discarded. The mysterious, eerie, hoarse voice asked, "How far has the Lei family cultivated the art of blood droplet?" "There are bloodlines like this underground, corresponding to each person." Yun-yang mulled over it, understanding it in his heart, but at the same time, he was shocked as well. He felt chills run down his spine, and his heart trembled. Could there actually be such a vicious involvement in this world? The technique passed down by the Lei clan's senior was clearly an extremely evil and sinister technique. Its purpose was to gather these people to cultivate and use their own aura to set up a sinister formation. Then, this formation would be used to continuously absorb the blood and energy of these people, benefiting the user. This was something that could be seen with a single glance. This formation should also have the effect of promoting cultivation. For example, the more that was absorbed, the faster the cultivation progress would be. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the fact that the Lei family's qi and blood were obviously being absorbed, yet they could still advance at such a shocking speed. However, if they continued cultivating for such a long period of time, the result would definitely be detrimental. Qi and blood were the foundation of life. The so-called rapid advancement was but a fleeting moment of glory. There was no doubt about this. It could be imagined. However, just when the formation was working well and the Lei family was working hard to improve, he had come and killed all the ace cultivators of the Lei family. This formation could not continue after losing its source of qi and blood. Therefore, the tip of these bloodlines were showing signs of withering. Be careful, continue digging. The current formation is still not the key thing that the master mentioned. Bai Bingxian advised carefully, but her voice was trembling and beads of cold sweat broke out on her forehead. In fact, it was not just her voice, her entire heart was trembling. She clearly realized that she might have come into contact with something that she should not have come into contact with at her level. Chapter 1179. Bai Bingxian instantly regretted it. However, there was no turning back now. She could only brace herself and continue. If she stopped now, it would only hasten her own death. Looking at the 7 subordinates beside her who were happy that they had completed their mission, Bai Bingxian felt her head buzzing. This matter was even more fatal. Lines of blood slowly appeared. Bai Bingxian waved her hand. "Stop." Then, she squatted down and carefully pulled up a line of blood. With a light shake, the line of blood actually flew up from the ground, shook twice in the air, and then disappeared. No, it wasn't just the blood thread that Bai Bingxian had touched. All of the blood threads disappeared at the same time without a trace. Continue to dig, and be careful. The demons finally dug to the 99 zhang area that their master had pointed out. At the center of the area, there was a small hole. Inside the hole, there was a blood mist. Within the blood mist, there was a faint light. It was obvious that there was something magical inside. Bai Bingxian waved her hand, and the blood mist suddenly dissipated. At the bottom of the hole, there was a fist-sized blood pearl. It looked like it was about to take shape, but it was not yet formed. Although it already had the form of a pearl, there was still blood flowing in its bones, and it had not condensed yet. The blood fog that had originally permeated the air was being continuously emitted from the blood beads. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that many human faces were continuously appearing within the blood fog. All of them were ferocious and terrifying. There were dozens of faces. Some were clear, while others were blurry. They were constantly rotating. Among these faces, Lei Junming, Lei Dongtian, a few elders of the Lei clan, and Lei Junming could be clearly recognized. A silent roar flashed past, and the cycle began again. "This is the meridian-severing blood pearl," Bai Bingxian exclaimed. Although Bai Bingxian had already overestimated the severity of the situation, she still did not expect it to be such an evil thing. The meridian-severing blood pearl, as the name suggested, in order to form this pearl, one had to wipe out the bloodline of a clan. Furthermore, the targeted clan had to have a large number of people. Only then would the effect be good. And the entire Lei clan was cultivating this blood droplet grand technique. One could imagine that if they continued to cultivate like this, once they reached a certain stage, not a single Lei clan disciple would survive. As for this blood pearl, it would completely form after turning all the members of the Lei family into dried corpses. After that, the creator of this cultivation method would naturally consume the blood bead. The cultivation results of everyone in the Lei clan, along with their own foundation, qi, and everything else, would all become the foundation of his own cultivation. Not a single drop was left. At that time, everyone in the Lei family, including the women and children, the old, the weak, the sick and the disabled. Everyone's strength would be reduced to nourishment for one person, and there would be no backlash. This was an extremely evil, cruel and inhumane cultivation technique. Yet, this cultivation method was one where those who were willing to take the bait would first see the benefits and not the harm. In the end, before the drawbacks were revealed, or before their blood was sucked, the cultivator would not be able to feel the difference in their body at all. When the last moment came, everything would be too late. Now, although the meridian severance blood bead was not fully formed due to Yun Yang's unexpected intrusion, the blood bead before them could still allow the mastermind to obtain the cultivation results of Lei Junming and the others for the past few years. It was a great benefit. If it was not so, the master would not have allowed Bai Bingxian and her subordinates to come into contact with such a huge secret. After all, the meridian-severing blood pearl had lost the Lei family's qi and blood supply and was now a tree without roots. The longer it was retrieved, the weaker its effect would be. This is an inhumane and heartless thing. Bai Bingxian mumbled to herself, feeling her entire hand trembling. Even in our demon race, this kind of cultivation technique is also forbidden. She took a deep breath to calm herself down and quickly retrieved a purple mystical crystal box from her robe. She stretched her hand out to retrieve the blood bead, obviously intending to put the meridian-severing blood pearl into the box. However, just as she stretched her hand out and was about to touch the blood bead, she felt a breeze in front of her. A chuckle could be heard as a voice said, "Let me study this thing first." The meridian-severing blood pearl that was within her reach suddenly flew into the air with a swoosh and rose hundreds of feet into the air. Bai Bingxian broke out in a cold sweat as she quickly chased after it. Who is it? As her thoughts raced, she realized that the voice was rather familiar and could not help roaring, "Yun Yang?" In the air, Yun Yang's usual purple silhouette was faintly discernible. His face was filled with a faint smile as he stretched his hand out to grab the meridian-severing blood pearl that had yet to form and said, "How can such a heartless thing exist?" Then, he stretched out his hand and squeezed. With a soft snap, tens of thousands of droplets of blood shot out. Waves of blood aura also scattered in all directions. A gust of wind suddenly appeared in the air. The blood mist dissipated in the wind and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The meridian-severing blood pearl that was the culmination of many evils in the human world had vanished into thin air, no longer existing in this world. Yun Yang. Bai Bingxian's cry was heart-wrenching, her pretty eyes bloodshot. This meridian-severing blood pearl was the last chance for her and everyone else in the group. No matter how inhumane and heartless it was, as long as she could send this meridian-severing blood pearl back, it would be a great merit. It would be enough to mend most of the flaws this time around. However, this last chance, all possibilities, had vanished into thin air under Yun Yang's squeeze. Her master had spent years to set this up and had even sent her to monitor the entire process. Everything was within her grasp, but it was all for naught. The culprit who had caused all of this was only one person. Yun Yang. Everything had been going smoothly, going according to plan. However, with Yun Yang's arrival, everything had changed. First, Lei family's cultivators who cultivated their master's cultivation method had been annihilated by him. Lei Dongtian, who had survived, had also perished a day later. Now, even this last target had vanished into thin air in Yun Yang's hands, annihilated in an instant. Bai Bingxuan's shriek was earth-shattering. She could no longer care about her demeanor as she sprung up, dashing towards Yun Yang with disheveled hair. This was a desperate move. She did not even add the necessary protective measures for herself. Although she knew that her cultivation base was higher than Yun Yang's, the gap between them was not too great. Even with the cultivation base that Yun Yang had shown earlier, it was enough to severely injure Bai Bingxian, who did not have any protective measures. However, Bai Bingxian had already lost all hope. The emerald green vines that blotted out the sky descended in an unprecedented manner. Amidst them was Bai Bingxuan's hysterical roar, "Yun Yang, you won't be able to escape this time. You must die, you must die." Yun Yang stood proudly, unhurriedly. A saber appeared in his hand. It was dreamlike and untraceable. With a swing of the saber, the vines that covered the sky were swept away immediately. Yun Yang's ferocious strike carried a force that was different from before. Unparalleled mystical qi, mixed with an extremely domineering force, swept in all directions. The demonic vines that were initially undefeatable could not gather in one spot now, let alone bind a person. The difference in strength had been completely reversed. The saber light shone like shooting stars trailing across the sky. After 3 slashes, there was only a bare vine handle left in Bai Bingxuan's hand. She glared at Yun Yang with gritted teeth. "Despicable person, you actually concealed most of your ability before this." Yun Yang said faintly, "To deal with a cunning person, one can only be more cunning than him. If not, how could I have come here so easily, let alone destroy the pearl of abominable evil that should not exist in this world? Only a man with a heart can do what he has a heart. Everyone, let's work together and kill him." With Bai Bingxuan's command, together with 7 of her subordinates, they attacked together. The mountain destroyer and prison breaker technique that swept through the surroundings appeared once more, this time even more powerful than before. However, Yun Yang did not hide his ability now, nor did he show mercy. The saber lair spread out abruptly. The saber light that filled the sky was like a sky full of stars. The burly man who bore the brunt of the attack could only let out a cry before another head was chopped off by Yun Yang. The decapitated man's body wriggled again and continued to emit mist. It was obvious that he was activating the demonic race's mystic art, life reversal and rebirth. It was a pity that Yun Yang's saber skill was different from before, and it was not just a single slash. With the successful slash, the head was chopped off, but the momentum of the slash was not over yet. Another dozen slashes came one after another, directly chopping off the arms, legs, and other limbs of the decapitated person. The last slash was even brazenly chopped down from the middle of the torso. Before the last slash, the man's body had been divided into a dozen parts, but there was still no trace of blood flowing from his torso. It was obvious that the arcane skill's power had yet to diminish and there was still room for him to survive. However, when Yin Yang's last slash had split him from top to bottom and dismembered him, the power of qi and blood surged into the sky. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed a large area of the ground red in an instant. At the same time, a huge corpse of a demonic beast suddenly appeared on the ground. It was a cat. Although this cat was 7 to 8 times bigger than Yellow Ox, it was still a cat. When the cat demon died, the arms and legs that were chopped off by Yun Yang turned into cat claws. Each of the claws was the size of an adult leopard. In the air, the 7 people who were still attacking with all their might saw Yun Yang waving his saber casually and dodging their attacks agilely. While evading all their attacks, he had dismembered the strong man. Moreover, they could not even save him in time. In fact, he was taking many of the attacks head-on. "Stop!" Bai Bingxian shouted. Everyone stopped their attacks at the same time. Bai Bingxuan's face was pale. Looking at the lifeless corpse on the ground, she was shocked. It was said that a cat had 9 lives. This was not a saying for a cat demon, it was the truth. Together with the demonic race's mystic art, even if it was decapitated, there was still a chance for it to come back to life. In fact, this was one of the main reasons why Bai Bingxian had chosen these 8 cat demons to monitor the situation. However, no matter how magical your mystic art was, no matter how talented you were, what could you do in the face of absolute power? So what if you could come back to life 10 times? I will kill you 100 more times and see if you can still die. The death of this strong man, coupled with his broken bones and dismembered body, made Bai Bingxian completely understand that Yun Yang had been playing with them previously. Not only was the gap between their true abilities reversed, it was also far, far beyond theirs. The cultivation base of this dismembered man was not as strong as Bai Bingxuan's, but he was still a 3rd-level holy king. Such a level of ability could not even withstand a single strike from Yun Yang. What about herself? How many strikes could she withstand? Even if she were to attack with the remaining 6 companions, how many strikes could she withstand? Yun Yang held his saber in the air. "Miss Bai, why did you stop? Didn't you say that you would kill me just now?" Bai Bingxuan's face was pale, but she did not retort immediately. Yun Yang's full-force attack was enough for Bai Bingxian to quickly determine Yun Yang's true cultivation base and understand the current situation of both sides. The current situation, to this young Miss Bai, was the most awkward and helpless situation she had ever been in. The other party had an irreconcilable grudge against her. The other party had destroyed all the arrangements on her side. Bai Bingxian had the heart to bite Yun Yang to death, not to mention to slice him into pieces. However, the problem was that they could not defeat him. The difference in their abilities was too great, they were not a match for him at all. In fact, he couldn't even escape from it. With Yun Yang's miraculous movement skill and mystical art of being traceless, would they be able to escape his grasp even if they were to scatter in all directions? Yun Yang's aura had enveloped all 7 of them. No matter who it was, as long as they moved, they would be met with Yun Yang's thunderous attack. A slight movement would mean total annihilation. However, the other party did not kill them directly but had stopped. Did this mean that the other party had other intentions? Bai Bingxian felt Yun Yang's aura wrapped around her and said through gritted teeth, "Yun Yang, what do you want?" "%. The spring festival is approaching. I feel uneasy. M. Chapter 1180. Under the influence of such an aura, no one would be able to escape and act rashly. It would only hasten their deaths. Bai Bingxian gritted her teeth and glared at Yun Yang hatefully. "What do you want?" Yun Yang smiled. "Looks like Lady Bai is a smart one." Bai Bingxian sneered, "You hid your strength and didn't kill us. You waited until now to show your strength and kill one of us in an extremely bloody manner, to intimidate us. It's obvious that you have ulterior motives and plans for the rest of us after going through so much trouble." Yun Yang clapped his hands and praised, "Smart indeed. Why don't someone as smart as Lady Bai make another guess? What do I want from you all?" Bai Bingxian snorted and said coldly, "No matter what you want, you're destined to never get any information or clues from me." Yun Yang smiled gently and said, "Really? Lady Bai doesn't look like a heartless person to me." Bai Bingxuan's expression changed at once and she said angrily, "What do you want?" Yun Yang landed leisurely in front of Bai Bingxian and said with a gentle smile, "I just want to invite Miss Bai to have a chat with me. I'm sure Miss Bai will give me this little bit of face. We're enemies. Why should I give you face?" Bai Bingxian said coldly. Before Bai Bingxuan's words echoed in the air, a sharp saber light flashed again and 9 rays of saber light shot forward. A cat demon who was watching Yunyang carefully cried out in pain. First, its head was chopped off, then its left hand, left shoulder, left leg, right leg. Before the saber could land on its chest, the cat demon had already revealed its true form. It was another tabby cat. This cat demon's cultivation was even weaker than the cat demon that had just perished. Thus, it perished. Obviously, the demonic race's mystical art was linked to one's cultivation base other than one's talent. This was another piece of information. The other 5 people cried out in shock and gathered together, moving behind by Bingxian. They looked at Yunyang cautiously, their gazes filled with terror as if they were looking at a devil or the grim reaper who could take their lives at any time. "Young Miss Bai, we'd better have a chat, what do you say?" Yunyang advised gently, "I'm alright in other aspects, but I'm a little curious. Once you get interested in something, if you don't understand it, you won't be able to sleep or eat. As for me now, I'm extremely interested in this mission of yours. I hope Miss Bai can fulfill my wish." Bai Bingshuan's face was pale. "If I still don't agree, will you kill another one of my clansmen?" "Yunyang, you are despicable." Yunyang sighed and said pitifully, "All the power is in Lady Bai's hands." "How am I despicable? Didn't Lady Bai just say that we're enemies? Me killing the alien race is a good deed that should be boasted about, no matter where I put it. As for whether I will kill another one of Lady Bai's clansmen, it depends on who among them is the unluckier one. After all, before I strike, I don't know who I'm going to kill this time. Right, I've been suppressing my ability all this time. I've been suppressing it too much, causing my control of my strength to be a little off. It's very possible that I'll kill 2 or even 3 more people later. I can really do it. Won't Lady Bai doubt it?" Bai Bingxian screamed shrilly, "Yunyang, you're the newly promoted leader of the middle-class Celestial Luck Banner. Don't you think it's shameful to coerce a little girl like this?" Yunyang smiled. "Why would I? If it were someone else, I might feel a little uncomfortable being so overbearing and condescending, but I won't feel the slightest bit uncomfortable when it comes to Lady Bai." "Why?" Bai Bingxian asked angrily, gritting her teeth. "Because Lady Bai, you, are no ordinary woman." Yunyang grinned, showing his teeth. "What's the difference?" Bai Bingxian asked, unconvinced. "Because you are a female cat." Yunyang's gaze turned icy, a stark contrast to his previous gentleness. The words came out of the blue and pierced Bai Bingshuan's heart. Bai Bingxian, who was exposed in front of her, paled. Facing Yunyang's cold gaze, she felt that it was so sharp that it could kill her directly. She could not resist it. Yunyang's previous intimidation, execution, and deliberate provocation were all to tear a hole in Bai Bingshuan's psyche. That was the chance for Yunyang to take advantage of it. Now, Yunyang could feel the violent fluctuation of Bai Bingshuan's mental strength. However, just as Yunyang was about to make his move, he was suddenly stunned. This was because the violent fluctuations had actually disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of deathly, despairing calmness. Yunyang lifted his head abruptly and looked at Bai Bingshuan's face. "Hopeless? Why?" Bai Bingxian shut her mouth tightly and glared at Yunyang, saying, "Sect leader Yun, everything has come to an end now. You don't have to waste your efforts and try to use such coercive tactics to attack me. I won't give in." She smiled sadly, looked at the 5 subordinates behind her and said, "Even if you don't kill them now, when we return, it will be difficult for us to have a good ending. At that time, death will be the easiest ending for us." Her eyes were filled with hopelessness. "It's already a capital offense that we can't kill you. Now that the second task has failed because of you, we're destined to die. Therefore, no matter how you humiliate and torture us, it's useless." Bai Bingshuan's gaze was filled with bone-deep hatred. "We're not as good as others, so we have to accept our fate. Yunyang, do what you want. There's no need to use any other methods to disgust us." Why does Lady Bai think that this is a dead end and that there's no turning back? Yin Yang asked in surprise. Since he knew where the crux of the matter was, Yin Yang quickly changed his mind. At the very least, his previous ruthlessness would not have succeeded. How can there be any turning back now that things have come to this? Lady Bai, I thought that you were really smart, but now it seems that you're just a so-so. This place has long been sealed off by your deific consciousness. When I attacked, I added another layer. Yin Yang said with a relaxed smile, in other words, other than the few of us here, no one else knows about what happened here, especially about the hidden item below. After we leave, there's no need to worry about anyone knowing. It can be said that there's no future trouble. Bai Bingxian said faintly, however, it's a fact that the meridian-severing blood bead is gone. Even if we've concealed this place, what awaits us is still the death penalty for not doing our job well. Although the meridian-severing blood bead is gone, there's still an unusually rich force of qi and blood in the pit that can be converted into something of great benefit. I think that while your lord has been longing for the meridian-severing blood bead, he might not be so sure that it can be born here, right? Yin Yang said with a relaxed smile, Lady Bai, I have a way to deal with this. As long as you work with me, I have a way to ensure that all of you don't die. Since it's a partnership, it's only natural that we both benefit from it. Bai Bingxian snorted and turned her face away, obviously disdainful of Yin Yang's words. In this world, one only has one life. Once it's lost, it's gone forever. I've always treasured it. Yin Yang said patiently, Lady Bai, in this world, having a few more friends is much better than having a few more enemies. In fact, I can really guarantee that as long as you do as I say, not only will you not be punished, you'll also be rewarded greatly. Yin Yang looked at the 6 people in front of him and smiled, Lady Bai, what do you think? Think about it carefully before you make a decision. With Lady Bai's outstanding beauty, I can't help but feel pity for her. I'm not a cold-hearted person, I really can't bear to smash a living beauty into minced meat. Bai Bingxuan's eyes shone as she asked, do you really have a way? Of course. What way? Tell me. Let's talk about it in detail. Yin Yang had indeed wanted to intimidate them to get what he wanted, but he soon realized that it was impossible. These people did not even have the hope of survival, so why would they be afraid of death? Therefore, Yin Yang changed his direction. It was the same temptation of life and death, but Bai Bingxian actually looked a little tempted after changing the way she phrased it. It was no longer as determined as before. Yin Yang and the demons arrived at the plum garden. Yin Yang scanned the area carefully and only entered after making sure that there were no unusual movements. Lady Bai, are these 5 subordinates reliable? Yin Yang asked. They are my clansmen who have followed me for many years, Bai Bingxian said through gritted teeth, feeling an indescribable sense of humiliation. To actually be forced to negotiate conditions like this was simply a great humiliation. All right, I'll cut to the chase and get straight to the point. Yin Yang said, I've always been one who values fair cooperation. Let's talk about your worries first. Although I've destroyed the meridian-severing blood bead and it's hard to get it back, I've mentioned that other than the meridian-severing blood bead, the mystical Een Abyss bead can also grow in a place like this. Mystical Een Pearl? Bai Bingxuan's eyes shone. If it's the mystical Een Pearl, it's naturally more precious than the meridian-severing blood bead, but it's even rarer. It only appears once in tens of thousands of years. Could it be that you have it? Are you more willing to present it to the master? As she spoke, she stared at Yin Yang suspiciously, her gaze filled with disbelief and disbelief. This fellow had even destroyed the meridian-severing blood bead so cleanly. How could he be so kind as to give her a mystical Een Pearl that was many times more precious than the meridian-severing blood bead? It was impossible no matter how she thought about it. How could there be such a fool in this world? As long as both parties cooperate sincerely, a mere mystical Een Pearl is nothing. Yin Yang took out a small box from his ring. Once the box was taken out, the surroundings seemed to have been plunged into an eerie atmosphere, as if they were in a graveyard. The gates of hell had opened in an instant, and thousands of ghosts appeared. When the corner of the box was opened, a menacing ghostly face emerged from the opening. Yin Yang hollered, "Evil creature." He reached out and grabbed it. Yin Yang grabbed the ghostly item and stuffed it into the box in a seemingly casual manner. He said with a smile, "Since you know how precious the mystical pearl is, you should be able to confirm that the one in my hand is a fully formed mystical pearl. However, I don't plan to give it to you directly. Such a precious treasure, with your ability, it'll be hard for you to even keep it. If you really take it back, your master will only be more suspicious. It's not a joke to receive the treasure with one hand and kill with the other." Bai Bingxian said, "Of course I understand that, but what should I do to gain the master's trust as much as possible?" Bai Bingshuan's words meant that she had acknowledged the intention to cooperate. The rest of the cat demons' eyes lit up as well, a glimmer of hope appearing on their lifeless faces. After all, no one would want to die if they could survive. Whether it was human or demon, all living things were the same. Bai Bingxian did not wait for Yun Yang to answer. Instead, she began to seriously consider how she should proceed in this direction. Knowing that it's something good, but not knowing what it is can only prove that the original intention of presenting the strange object is to make up for his mistake. Yin Yang chuckled. There are only a few choices for you to make. 1 is that your superior doesn't believe you. 2 is that they are skeptical. 3 is that they believe you. Whether he believes you or not, you just have to pretend to be clueless. Anyway, you only found this in Lei family's residence. You didn't find anything else. Yin Yang said with a grin, "As for your master, as long as he knows what's good for him, he'll definitely look at you differently. Even if you're not his most capable assistant, you're still someone who's driven by luck. As long as he doesn't find the mystical pearl, you'll be indispensable. Do you understand this? Because he wants to find the mystical pearl, and I'm the culprit, the cause? That's right. The true value of a mystical pearl surpasses too many meridian-severing blood pearls. The blood pearls can only increase one's cultivation base, blood qi, and foundation to a certain extent, but the mystical pearl is an extraordinary item that leads straight to Tao." Bai Bingshuan's eyes grew brighter. It could work. It could definitely work. But he'll definitely come to check. Even if he doesn't come personally, he'll send his most capable subordinates. This is the inevitable next step. I'll be fully prepared. Whether he comes personally or sends someone else, he won't be able to obtain the mystical pearl directly, but there will definitely be some clues. This bit of information will be enough. I can accept this cooperation. Bai Bingxian thought about it for a long time and said in a low voice, "However, compared to what you're giving, what you can get from me isn't much." Yin Yang was stunned. "Oh. I really don't know much," Bai Bingxian said blandly. "I don't even know anything. This is the truth. Compared to the demon clan, my strength is only at the bottom. The reason why my subordinates and I were assigned to carry out this mission is mainly because of our ability to transform and protect our lives. It has nothing to do with cultivation or battle prowess. If not for the fact that the Lei family's cultivation is very limited, we wouldn't even have the right to supervise them." Yin Yang laughed and said, "I've already predicted this. The price you need to pay is extremely simple. I'll ask and you'll answer. If you can't answer, I won't force you. Just owe me a favor. I believe that we can still work together in the future, perhaps even for a long time." Bai Bingxian forced a smile. Her expression was still a little stiff, but it was no longer as hostile as before. "If that's the case, please ask your questions." "All right, my first question is, are you felines of the demon race?" "The demon race?" Bai Bingshuan's expression changed instantly. She bit her lip and nodded. "According to what I know, the demon race, isn't it a very powerful race in the demon race? Why were you sent here?" Yin Yang looked at Bai Bingxian suspiciously. Rumor has it that the 9 Lives Cat King is an existence that is not much weaker than a demon emperor. I was quite critical of this, but after today's battle, the rumor is indeed true. Rumor had it that the 9 Lives Cat King had fought with the Sacred Heart Palace's Lord Hua. After that battle, Lord Hua had a new realization and went into closed-door cultivation to attempt a breakthrough. He had not come out until now, which was why Zhang Wufei was replaced as the Sacred Heart Palace's lord. The 9 Lives Cat King seemed to have gained something after his return as well. Everything else aside, Yun Yang had personally experimented with the feline clan's mystique of self-preservation today. Being able to stay alive even after being decapitated and having one's body crushed, it had been proven by both of them. Although both of them had lost their lives in Yun Yang's hands, Yun Yang believed that the mystique would be more effective based on the cultivation base of the person involved. If it was used on by Bingxian, the effect would definitely be higher. Thinking about the existence of a higher cultivation base, such as the 9 Lives Cat King himself, he might be an existence that could not be killed at all. How could it be ordinary? Unexpectedly, Bai Bingxuan's expression grew even more bitter. Back then, there was a cause for the battle between the cat ancestor and the Sacred Heart Palace's lord. After the battle, Lord Cat Ancestor found out the truth by chance. He was enraged and went straight to the Demon Palace and killed the Demon Emperor's second crown prince. Everyone in the second crown prince's palace was killed by the mad cat ancestor. Hearing Bai Bingxuan's words, Yun Yang was shocked. He had only asked casually, not intending to dig deeper. He did not expect to find out such an earth-shattering inside story. After that, the cat ancestor was personally captured and suppressed by the demon emperor. Even though the cat ancestor's physical body was immortal, he could not escape the demon emperor's limitless imprisonment and could not come out again. As the cat ancestor was suppressed, the 9 Lives cat race was suppressed by the empress and her clansmen. If it was light, they would be exiled. If it was serious, they would lose their lives. Almost all of the 9 Lives cat race's seniors who served in the demon emperor's court were imprisoned and killed with groundless charges. It was only a few decades. The millions of people who had transformed and the billions of people who had not, were all dead. Now, there are less than 1,000 of the 9 Lives demon cat race who can transform, and there are only 100,000 of them who have not. The 9 Lives demon cat race that was once prosperous and domineering in the demon emperor's domain now exists only in name. Destruction is imminent. Bai Bingxuan's gaze was bleak, as if she was weeping. I see. Yin Yang said, there was no news of this in the outside world at all. Of course, this is the biggest scandal of the demon emperor's clan in a million years. How could it not be covered up? Bai Bingxuan's eyes glinted with resentment. What's more, the celestial canine clan, who had the closest relationship with the 9 Lives demon cat race and boasted that they had been close for millions of years, changed sides. This made the 9 Lives cat race even worse. I don't know when the rumor started spreading, but it was said that dogs are loyal by nature and only recognize one master in their lifetime, loyal to death. Cats, on the other hand, are cunning by nature, greedy for enjoyment, fond of delicacies, and loathe work. They can betray their masters for some benefits at any time. Unfortunately, this nonsense spread far and wide in the demon peacock emperor's realm. It became more and more intense, and the entire demon peacock emperor's realm had no place for the 9 Lives cat clan. The elders of the clan were forced to move out in order to survive. Unexpectedly, this indirectly confirmed the rumor that they had betrayed their masters. The time when we were hunted by the entire demon emperor's realm was the darkest time for the 9 Lives cat race. Those who managed to escape the demon emperor's realm, reach the outside world safely, and survive. Bai Bingxian said sadly, I don't know how many, but the number is definitely not many. My father, mother, uncles, aunts, and the others all perished during the escape. However, on our journey, there were 6,000 to 7,000 people who escaped together, but in the end, only the 8 of us survived. Her eyes were rimmed red as she murmured, now, only 6 are left. Yun Yang did not expect his casual question to elicit such a shocking piece of information. Just this alone was already worth the ticket price he had paid for this setup. Chapter 1181. In order to work better and to have a better breakout, I'm carefully applying for a few days of leave. Leaders, please give your instructions. It's scheduled to start tomorrow. Brackets, 29th of the 12th month to the 7th day of the 1st month. I'm applying for 8 days of leave. On the account that I've been diligent and hardworking for more than a year and that I'm especially handsome, please sign your permission. That's all. Thank you very much. I'm the Supreme Being, applies for leave from the leaders for the Chinese New Year. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1182. This year's Lunar New Year was very boring. No one was setting off firecrackers anymore. Moreover, I applied for 8 days of leave, but I was stuck in a bottle for 4 days. Can you believe it? I'm still wearing a thick cotton cap. Can you believe it? I wasn't sick when I didn't apply for leave, but after I applied for leave, my head froze, and then I got a migraine. This is really, I wanted to have a big drink this Lunar New Year. But, because of this, I didn't even get to drink red wine. Can you believe it? I didn't drink a drop of wine this Lunar New Year. Other people gained 10 pounds during the Lunar New Year, but I lost 6 pounds during the Lunar New Year. Other people drink and brag at night, but I wear the electric headgear that my wife borrowed for perming to prevent my head from sweating. Sigh, I won't act pitiful anymore. In short, I'm not happy. I'll update at night, I'll write. I am the Supreme, I'm back. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1183. Pardon my rudeness. I didn't expect Lady Bai to be an important figure of the Nine Lives Cat Demon clan. Yin Yang smiled. Why do you say that? Bai Bingxian denied it hurriedly. I'm only a junior demon with a shallow cultivation base who was lucky enough to escape. Yin Yang chuckled again and said leisurely, throughout the entire escape process, many seniors with a higher cultivation base than you have died, but you, a little demon with a shallow cultivation base, have remained safe and sound the entire time. As for the subordinates who stayed by your side, their attitude towards you was more like blind loyalty than admiration. Wouldn't I be an idiot if I couldn't see this? Bai Bingxian shook her head with a pained expression. Leader Yun's eyes are sharp, of course you're right. But what about our past identities? It's all in the past. Now, we're just a bunch of cat demons who depend on each other. That's all, there's no difference between us. Yin Yang nodded and did not linger on the topic. Lady Bai, you said that since the cat ancestor didn't perish but was only suppressed, it means that there's still a chance for him to come out again. Then why are the other demons so ruthless and merciless? Aren't they afraid of his revenge in the future? Other than His Majesty the demonic sovereign's limitless imprisonment, the Lord Cat ancestor is also suppressed in the demon lake. Bai Bingxian said, ever since the demonic sovereign's domain was established, none of the demonic seniors who were suppressed in the demon lake have ever come out alive. It's also because of this common understanding that the various clans made their choice. Yin Yang sighed. So that was why the cat ancestor had basically been executed. Yin Yang could not help but recall Feng Guohai's introduction to the Nine Lives Cat back then. When the Nine Lives Cat and Hall Master Hua fought, everything within 10,000 miles was destroyed, none of the mountains and rivers were spared. How peerless was that? How glorious was that? Combined with the cat ancestor's life-saving ability that he had personally experienced today, it was truly remarkable. If the cat ancestor were to perform this skill himself, who knew how far he could go? The so-called immortality of the physical body was definitely not a lie. But such a figure had failed and was suppressed at the bottom of the demon life lake, causing his clan to lose power just like that. Practically all of his clansmen were slaughtered, causing him to be in an extremely miserable state. When the two were compared, it truly caused others to be unable to help but sigh. Thinking of this, Yin Yang looked at Bai Bingxian again. His gaze was even more meaningful. This girl's identity must be extraordinary. No wonder she was sent here for a mission. She is obviously here to seduce her. She should greet her with her body, but she still ignored Lei Dongtian. However, since Bai Bingxian was unwilling to talk about it, Yun Yang did not probe further. Since all of you are, then why? Yun Yang looked at Bai Bingxian. The reason why we were able to escape and come back from death was because of someone's help. And it was this person who, after saving us, used a method to control us. Little did they know that after we escaped, we had nowhere to go at all. We already had the heart to attach ourselves to the strong, but it was just the difference between one being active and the other being passive. Yun Yang asked, "Who is that person?" Yun Yang was not the least bit interested in how this person had controlled them. It was rare for people to be kind or malicious to each other, so the person's motive was not Yun Yang's concern. Yun Yang only wanted to know this person's true identity. We have no idea about this person's true identity, background, and origin. The only thing we can be sure of is that he is a demon. Also, his ability should have reached the level of a royal saint. He is the pinnacle of the demon race and the world's top expert. Bai Bingxian answered quickly. Demon race? Yun Yang was stunned by the answer. This answer was completely different from the direction he had guessed. It was the complete opposite of what he had guessed. All the evidence and the direction of the incident clearly pointed to the Lei family's old ancestor, the Sacred Heart Palace's great elder Lei Qianli. But why was there such a sudden turn? The person behind all of this was actually a demon clan. You said that the only thing you can be sure of is that your master is a demon, and an extremely powerful one at that. Yin Yang's eyes flashed as he asked for the first time. Yes, we, the demon race, have an instinctive way of detecting our own kind. Actually, it's not really a way to distinguish. We can tell with just a glance. There's no need to identify demonic aura like you humans do, or to fight. We only need a glance. That person is a demon. Do you know his name? I don't know. Then what did he use to control you? Is it a secret skill unique to the demon race? Yes, he used a trace of his demonic soul to form a bond. Since his ability is far above all the current members of the Cat clan, he can die with just a thought. There's no way to fight back. How long have you been controlled by him until now? Our branch escaped with the help of his ability, but we fell into his hands immediately. It's been 13 years. 13 years, the cat ancestor was also suppressed 13 years ago. How is that possible? The cat ancestor was suppressed by the demon emperor hundreds of years ago, and our 9 Lives Cat clan is one of the top 5 clans in the demon emperor's domain. Previously, our higher-ups were still there, and we could still hide from each other and support each other. Although we were struggling at death's door, we still managed to survive. It wasn't until more than 10 years ago that we were finally weakened to the point where we couldn't even hide anymore. We had no choice but to go to extremes and flee the demon realm. From what you think, did the demon controlling you suddenly decide to control you, or was it premeditated? I think you've thought about it before, haven't you? Bai Bingxian furrowed her brows and carefully thought for a while. Then, she cautiously replied, "Of course I've thought about this. Based on my personal judgment, the other party doesn't seem to have come up with this idea on the spur of the moment. But if it's premeditated, it doesn't seem like it. If it's premeditated, what's the use of controlling just the 8 of us?" Yin Yang nodded. That's true. Then what have you done for him all these years? I'm afraid there must be a lot of them. A lot of them indeed. Bai Bingxian had no intention of hiding this part, recounting them one by one. Yin Yang listened attentively, occasionally asking for details. Listening to Bai Bingxian's narration of the past, Yin Yang realized that the things his lord wanted Bai Bingxian and her clansmen to do were not dangerous at all. In the beginning, it was not dangerous at all. It was mostly used to train the team and train their teamwork. In the middle of it, sneaking into the demon emperor's domain to steal something or other heaven-earth treasure was much riskier, but from Yin Yang's perspective, it was more of a test. In spite of this, Bai Bingxian unintentionally mentioned a topic that moved Yun Yang. Every full moon night, his lord would ask Bai Bingxian to cultivate the cat ancestor's unique cultivation method under the moonlight and pray to the cat ancestor about the current situation of the cat clan. What did this mean? Chapter 1184. Yun Yang pondered with a frown. Other than that, the most noteworthy thing was that there had been 2 incidents similar to the Lei family's annihilation. Bai Bingxian and the others were responsible for completing the related missions. Of course, their main task was to choose a specific descendant from the family to spare his life and hand him over to the mysterious person. After that, they had nothing to do with it. However, they had then coincidentally found out that the 2 families they were responsible for monitoring had been completely annihilated. At the same time, it was only now that Bai Bingxian knew that the root of all the planning was for the meridian-severing blood bead. Since he understood the crux of the matter, he would probably kill the remaining bloodline of his family at the last moment and use his true essence to facilitate or awaken the final form of the meridian-severing blood bead. Then, he would sacrifice the blood bead to obtain the complete power. Then, do you know the true form of the great demon who controls all of you? Yun Yang asked. We've never seen his true form. He's always dressed in a black robe and we can't see his face. However, he should be very tall and strong. Bai Bingxian said hesitantly. There's no need to talk about this. Since he has the pinnacle of the demon clan's ability, it's only a matter of time before he changes his body. It's not enough to be relied on. Yin Yang interrupted, have you seen him fight? What kind of weapon does he use? We've only seen him use a sword. A sword he picked up casually. Other than using the mystical crystal for communication, does he have any other way of contacting all of you? Most of the time, he communicates with the mystical crystal. After all, the missions we've carried out all these years have been spent monitoring the target. He'll occasionally come to Lingxiu Valley where we stay. Does he have any special signs? For example, is there someone else behind this great demon? Or perhaps, he's in cahoots with someone else? Or perhaps, he's in contact with the demon emperor's domain? Yin Yang racked his brain to ask every question he could think of. Information was often found in these inconspicuous details. I can feel that he has a very strong purpose in his actions and his actions are unusually meticulous. He plans before he acts. Basically, he has to think about everything for a long time before he moves on to the next step. His cautiousness has truly reached an astonishing level. As long as he doesn't have to show himself, he definitely won't show himself. There's one more thing. Even though we've only killed 3 sects, including the Lei family, we're not the only team under him. That's because I've searched for cases of the human race being wiped out during my free time and discovered that there were many similar cases. It's just that there are many humans in the Xianhuang world, and third-rate aristocratic families like the Lei family are as numerous as the hairs on a cow. It's not uncommon for an entire family to be wiped out overnight by their enemies. If not for the fact that we've made up our minds, it would have been difficult to discover more. Of course, this is just my personal opinion, and I don't have any concrete evidence. After all, his other manpower has never been displayed before us. Listening to Bai Bingxian's words, Yun Yang felt a growing headache. According to what he said, this person would be very difficult to find. Yun Yang's original plan was almost useless now. Yun Yang's series of tactics were all aimed at the Lei family's great elder, Lei Qianli. Now, however, it was obvious that he was lacking. According to his original plan, he could not use a single one of them. Instead, it was the mystical Yin Pearl that he had thought of on the spur of the moment that might yield some results. Is there anything else you want to know? Bai Bingxian was more proactive now. From Yun Yang, she had discovered a way for her to break free from his control. However, the information she had provided was too weak and did not match the benefits that Yun Yang had offered. Naturally, she hoped that he could provide more assistance to increase the leverage that she could use. What I want to know. Yun Yang's mind flashed as he said, the people behind you should know about the Lei family reuniting with their ancestors, right? The Lei family only cultivated the evil cultivation method that's suitable for the Meridian Severance blood pearl after reuniting with their ancestors. And that lord of yours sent you here at this time. Yin Yang said faintly, so no matter what, at least on the surface, it's related to the Lei family's old ancestor. Indeed, Yin Yang's deduction was not wrong based on this layer of cause and effect. It was completely reasonable. Of course I know this, but the person who gave the cultivation method back then might not be an imposter. Bai Bingxian said calmly, with his skill, if he wanted to impersonate the Lei family's old ancestor to set up this trap, it's impossible for the Lei family's people to tell. So, yes or no, what the truth is, it all depends on what we do and how we do it. With Bai Bingshuan's reminder, Yun Yang, who had thought through this crucial point, felt refreshed and inspired. Bai Bingxian, for the time being, we're making a deal. I'll use a trick in exchange for your information, and you won't have to die because of it. You might even be put in an important position. However, I think we can work together on a deeper level. After all, the differences between humans and demons are no longer so absolute to you, Yun Yang said with a smile. Bai Bingxian broke into a smile, like a blossoming flower at the dawn of spring. I feel the same. Maintaining a close working relationship with sect leader Yun may be the key to the Cat clan's survival. Then use your freedom to exchange for space for our cooperation. Yin Yang said softly, this is my bargaining chip. Bai Bingxian pressed her lips together and said, I'll cooperate fully with you. Yin Yang chortled. Then I wish us a happy cooperation and mutual benefit. Watching Yun Yang leave, Bai Bingshuan's expression turned grim again. Princess, can this Yun Yang be trusted? Behind her, a slightly scrawny cat demon asked softly. Bai Bingshuan's gaze was blank as she murmured, it doesn't matter whether he's trustworthy or not now. We've long given up on anyone. Ever since that day. Haven't we realized our current situation? We're only someone else's slaves now. Whether we can survive this ordeal is still uncertain. What right do we have to choose whether someone else is trustworthy or not? We can only take a gamble. Bai Bingxian gripped the jade box in her hand tightly as if she was holding on to her life. Let's go. The mystical Een Pearl, this is a big enough bet. Let's see if you'll take the bait. Yin Yang returned to the Lei family residence in stealth mode and made some arrangements. Chapter 1185. Bai Bingxian had already sent the message. The Lei family has been annihilated. Yin Yang is confirmed to have escaped without a trace. According to my lord, we dug 99 feet deep but found something strange. This subordinate can't see it clearly, so it's hard for me to make a decision. Please make a decision, my lord. After the message was sent out, a lazy voice came from the other end after a while. What is it? When this subordinate obtained this item, I was almost taken advantage of by it. It took me a lot of effort to put it away. That item has the ability to transform. I guess, it's very similar to the legendary Nightmare Soul. Bai Bingxian said with uncertainty. Hearing Bai Bingshuan's words, the other side of the message crystal immediately flashed with unprecedented urgency. The person's voice came one after another, as if there was no end to it. Nightmare Soul? Are you sure? The ability to transform? What did it transform? How many illusions did it form? To what extent? Your ability is mediocre, but it took you a lot of effort to capture it? Could this Nightmare Soul already be able to pursue souls? No, if it could, how could you capture it with your ability? After 3 sentences, he calmed down. Stay where you are. Don't move. Don't make any reckless moves. Then, there was no sound. After Bai Bingxian and the others left, Yun Yang stayed for a while at the Lei family's old residence before shooting off in a direction far away. Then, he returned to the old residence and made some arrangements before leaving, satisfied. I still need to add something over there. After some thought, he went to the faraway mountain again. He made 3 trips back and forth. Nightmare Soul? Everything that should be there, something that people suspect is there. It's just that. Yin Yang left with an inexplicable chuckle. This setup should be enough to keep the human or demon in the dark interested for a long, long time. On the second day of Yun Yang's departure, Bai Bingxian and the others came to the side of the dug hole as Yun Yang had instructed, waiting quietly. Yun Yang was straightforward. Bai Bingxuan's master had been longing for the mystical Yin Pearl and would definitely arrive the next day. He had to wait early to ensure that there was no mistake. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in the sky and a black shadow covered the sun. In an instant, the Lei family's old residence became gloomy, as if it was no longer in the mortal world. Bai Bingxian and the others didn't dare to move recklessly. A black figure suddenly appeared in the sky. The newcomer was wearing a large black robe that covered his body and face. As the wind blew, the black robe fluttered in the air. It was as if the person was weightless, as if only the black robe was fluttering in the air. Was it discovered here? A sinister voice came from within the black robe, but it caused everyone to shiver and feel a chill run down their spines. Yes, Bai Bingxian replied respectfully with her head lowered. Why aren't you showing me? Bai Bingxian dared not delay as she presented the box that Yun Yang had passed to her with both hands. With a wave of the black-robed man's hand, the box flew up from Bai Bingxuan's hand and slowly flew hundreds of feet before landing in his hand. It was also at this moment of contact that the black-robed man felt the strange wave that came from the box. It was an extremely sinister chill that was filled with an endless desire to devour. The black-robed man was delighted. He sensed it carefully again and realized that the item in the box was filled with an indescribable vitality other than an otherworldly chill. It was as if it could endlessly rush left and right in the jade box, trying its best to break free. Such vitality and spirituality were all pointing in the direction that the black-robed man hoped for the most. The black-robed man actually trembled slightly in the air, his eyes glinting. The demonic chi that enveloped him spread and the ghostly aura around him intensified. It's a nightmare soul indeed. It's really a nightmare soul. He turned his head abruptly, his gaze focused on the place where the Lei family's residence used to be but was now a bottomless pit. He sucked in a deep breath. I didn't expect a nightmare soul to appear here. Could it be that the heavens are blessing me and helping me achieve my dream? But why would a spiritual item like a nightmare soul appear here? I used the art of crimson to lead the way, the Lei family's flesh and blood as a guide, and the soul as a mark. The expected reward was only the meridian-severing blood bead. Why would a nightmare soul appear? This shouldn't be the effect of the crimson meridian-severing formation, it should be, the person in the black shadow muttered to himself, his eyes looking in all directions, constantly scanning. This area, is actually an extremely rare and well-hidden gathering place of ghosts. However, this has been the Lei family's old residence for generations. Although the Lei family's talents are mediocre, they are a thriving family with an extraordinary foundation and luck. How can it be a gathering place of spirits under their old residence? Looking at the extremely obvious terrain of the three suns, the black-robed person frowned. After thinking for a while, he couldn't figure it out no matter what. At this moment, there was another movement underground. The black-robed person's eyebrows twitched. His entire body shot into the pit like lightning. As he raised his hands, the entire layer of soil flew up. His efficiency was more than 100 times that of Bai Bingxian and the others. However, even though he acted extremely fast, he was still a step too late. He only had time to see a gray stream of air flash eerily before disappearing into the ground without a trace. Only an eerie feeling spread out from underground. Although it was only a flash, it lingered for a long time and was not fake. The black-robed person's figure flashed and shot into the sky. In an instant, he had already rushed thousands of feet into the sky. He also released all the power of his divine sense. Immediately, he focused his gaze on the distant mountain range that was beyond his sight. The eerie power was fleeing in that direction. It's actually another nightmare soul. How can this be? The black-robed person stood in midair, a little dazed for a moment. Was the crimson chi here so thick? He thought hard. The nightmare soul has actually appeared here again, this place. Could it be? Yes, it must be so. The black-robed person's eyes suddenly lit up when he thought of this. He seemed to have figured something out. Although this is the Lei family's old residence and the place where the luck of the family gathers, it is also the place where the Lei family's male bloodline has been wiped out. The accumulated fortune of the Lei family over the generations has instead fueled the resentment within the Lei family. Especially these few days when the Lei family has been completely annihilated, the resentment is at its peak, and the nightmare soul can only grow by gathering the purest negative energy. Chapter 1186. Therefore, other than the incomplete meridian severance blood bead, the real reason for the nightmare soul's arrival is also because of the resentment from the Lei family's men's deaths over the past few days. It's reasonable that the energy that should have formed the meridian severance blood bead has been sucked dry. Although the resentment gathered by the Lei family is heavy, it's only temporary. What's more, the meridian severance blood bead's power is more in line with the nightmare soul's intentions, allowing Bai Bingxian to take it by accident. How lucky, now that the nightmare soul has come and left, it might not be because of me, but because it's being transported. Although the nightmare soul's attribute is unique, its power is relatively limited. It's obvious that Bai Bingxian could capture it. There must be more than one nightmare soul that has come to absorb the meridian severance blood bead's power. Does this mean that there's a mystical Een pearl in this area, and it's in the process of forming? Muttering the words mystical Een pearl, the black-robed man's silhouette that was hidden in the black robe actually trembled in excitement. It was obvious that he could not control his emotions. The mystical Een pearl, the black-robed man's gaze was filled with unconcealable greed and longing. The Tao of Yang, the Tao of Yin. Both paths of Yin and Yang can lead straight to the end. Then, he landed in a flash. Looking at Bai Bingxian, a new doubt rose in his heart. That's not right. A single nightmare soul's combat power isn't strong, but it's extremely fast. Even if I wanted to capture it, I probably wouldn't be able to catch up, much less capture it. With Bai Bingxuan's ability, how could she capture it? Thinking about this, he blurted out, "How did you capture this thing then?" Following Yun Yang's instruction, Bai Bingxian answered in a trembling voice, "After this subordinate dug out the destination according to Master's method, I didn't see the blood bead that you've mentioned. There was only a thick blood fog around this thing that was squirming. The moment we met, it pounced towards this subordinate. Everything happened too quickly. In a moment of desperation, this subordinate stretched out my hand. I caught it with just a stretch of my hand. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary. This subordinate was very surprised then. He grabbed it with just a stretch of his hand." When the black-robed man heard this, a strange light flashed in his eyes. He stared at Bai Bingxian without blinking. He extended his hand and grabbed Bai Bingxuan's wrist. A stream of qi instantly entered Bai Bingxuan's meridians. After quickly wandering around, he suddenly realized something and said, "Your 9 Lives Demon Cat clan actually had such a special talent. You can restrain cold and gloomy things?" No, this still doesn't make sense, eh?" At this point, he suddenly stopped talking. This was because he had discovered a wisp of faintly discernible cold energy in the depths of Bai Bingxuan's dantian. This kind of coldness was almost imperceptible, but it was real. It was a kind of special coldness that should not belong to a living person. Death Chi. His eyes flashed. He finally understood everything. So that was how it was. So there was an expert who had placed a death restriction on Bai Bingxian. That was why the nightmare soul rushed towards her. It was because of that extremely pure death chi, just like how the Lei clan's male descendants were all killed, causing the unformed meridian termination blood bead's resentment energy to increase greatly. Because of this, the nightmare soul came here and didn't see the resentment energy. Instead, it absorbed the blood bead's foundation. Later on, when it sensed the even purer death chi on Bai Bingxuan's body, it instinctively threw itself into her arms and was naturally captured. I understand, I completely understand. When he thought of this, the black-robed man's heart was completely dispelled. He looked at Bai Bingxian as if he was looking at a peerless treasure. F***ck, if I knew you didn't have long to live before today, I wouldn't have come looking for you. But after today, it's completely different. Even though you still can't escape death, you can help me find the nightmare soul before you step into the Yellow Springs. As long as I find the nightmare soul, it means that I can find the profound underworld bead. It means that I have a bright future ahead of me. This was simply a rare short-lived ghost that was hard to come by in this world. How can I not cherish such a precious short-lived ghost? If I die before I find the profound underworld bead, that would be terrible. Looks like I have to treat this little cat demon better in the future, as well as I can. Only by winning her heart can I use her to its fullest potential and greatly increase the chances of obtaining the profound underworld bead. Bingxian, this time, you completed the mission well. The black-robed man's voice was gentle as he praised, I am very satisfied. Come forward. Bai Bingxian's mind went blank. Completed well? Where did that come from? How did I complete the mission? Didn't I mess up the mission? Was he being sarcastic? Before Bai Bingxian could react, she felt a gentle sensation in her palm, and a faint fragrance wafted into her nose. Her entire body was filled with joy. The black-robed man had rewarded her with an entire pack of Cat Life Divine Lotus Pills. This was the favorite thing of the Nine Lives Cat clan. Although it was called a pill, it was actually a spiritual herb produced in the Demon Emperor's realm. The spiritual herb was in the form of a sheet, and other than emitting a unique scent, it had no other effects. The scent was completely ineffective to other demon clans. It was not even comparable to the most common spices. However, to the Cat Demon clan, it was a fatal temptation. Once the Nine Lives Cat Demon caught a whiff of the scent, they would feel as if they had ascended to immortality. They would feel an indescribable sense of elation. Since Bai Bingxian and the rest had left the Demon Emperor's realm, they had not come into contact with this spiritual herb for a long time. Now that they could smell the scent that they had been yearning for, they could not be more satisfied. She could not wait to take a piece out right there and then and experience the extreme ecstasy of ecstasy. How blissful, meow meow meow, Yun Yang is a good person indeed. The idea he gave me is so useful, meow meow meow. In fact, it was not only Bai Bingxian, the other 5 cat subordinates' eyes were glowing as well. They stared at the big bag of Cat Life Divine Lotus Pills in Bai Bingxian's hands, their faces filled with desire and fascination. Bingxian, the follow-up of the Nightmare Soul still depends on you. The black-robed man said amicably, don't slack off. This subordinate obeys, my lord. I shall not disobey your orders. If I'm not mistaken. The black-robed man pointed at the direction where the Nightmare Soul had gone and said faintly, it should be in that area. We still need to search carefully. Yes, this subordinate will bring them to search carefully. I will go with all of you. We must find out where the Nightmare Soul is in the shortest time possible. The black-robed man laughed and swept Bai Bingxian and the rest up with a wave of his sleeves, flying into the distance. Chapter 1187. It was the direction where the black-robed man had gone. On the other side, it was a pitch-black mountain forest with an extremely complicated terrain. At the same time, Yin Yang was still busying himself in the forest on the other side. He seemed to have just finished his work. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he murmured, 6 or 7, should be enough. Next, I'll let all of you search here in peace for a period of time. This young master has put in so much effort. It's not right that I don't have a considerable result. Before his voice echoed in the air, Yun Yang's silhouette gradually faded away, turning into a gust of wind and leaving quietly. However, he happened to bump into Bai Bingxian and the others, brushing past them. Bai Bingxian did not notice it at first, but she suddenly heard a clear voice in her ears, bring him around in circles here. Take at least a month, then we'll talk about the rest. Bai Bingshuan's expression did not change, but she was shocked inwardly. What cultivation base does this sect leader Yun have? He has suppressed us previously, but it has not reached the point of killing us instantly. Even if his ability is far superior, the disparity should not be too great. However, this master of mine has the cultivation base of a demon king. Yin Yang's voice was so close, but why did he not notice the latter at all? The two of them were clearly very close to each other, almost touching each other's bodies. Such an ability was more than just shocking. It was unimaginable and unbelievable. Yin Yang did not linger any longer, hurrying back to the residence of 9 Supremes. Although Yin Yang appeared calm and unruffled in front of Bai Bingxian, he was actually quite anxious. In the few days he had stayed here, especially on the last day, countless forces of karma had gathered from all directions, almost without a break from dawn to dusk. In other words, Yin Yang had been like an ocean for the past few days. Countless streams of karmic energy flowed into him at every moment of every day. What had happened was almost self-evident. At the very least, the residents of 9 Supremes had killed a lot of people, a lot of bad people, villains, and cowards. Otherwise, this would not have happened. It was true. During the period of time when Yin Yang was not around, the disciples who were still in the residence of 9 Supremes continued to cultivate and improve as hard as they could, while the top 10 disciples and the leaders of the residence of 9 Supremes who had gone out to train according to the original plan. Within a radius of 20,000 miles from the residence of 9 Supremes, there were traces of the residence of 9 Supremes disciples roaming the martial world. How dare you lie to me? Yun Xiaoxin pouted as she glanced at the dozen corpses in front of her, her eyes still filled with anger. It was not that Yun Xiao was narrow-minded, but, as the eldest senior sister of the residence of 9 Supremes, she had been deceived 7 to 8 times in less than a month of roaming the martial world. Of course, she was furious. Of course, other than anger, there was also a lot of embarrassment. After all, it was very embarrassing. Yun Xiaoxin still remembered the first time she was deceived after she came out. At first, she thought she had met a few kind-hearted sisters, but in the end, the women's real intention was to drug her and kill her so that they could seize her spatial ring. Fortunately, she had cultivated successfully in the sect and was already immune to all kinds of poisons, so a mere drug was naturally not a problem for her. After killing those women, Yun Xiaoxin fell into a state of melancholy and even felt sorry for them. These people were killed by me just like that, and I'm obviously fine. Is it really okay to kill them? The second time she was deceived, she was simply cheated of her money, and she could not figure it out at first. It was only after a long time that she came to her senses. It was too embarrassing. The furious eldest senior sister rushed back to find the cheater and punish him severely. For the third time, Yun Xiaoxin pretended to be smart and showed off her amazing strength. Then, she was respectfully invited into the stronghold as a distinguished guest, and so many people knelt in front of her and begged her to be their big sister. Yun Xiaoxin, who thought she had succeeded in her scheme, was overjoyed and satisfied the pleasure of being the big sister. However, the pleasant time was always short. After killing several batches of enemies who came to make trouble for her, she realized that her little brothers were all a group of people who committed all kinds of evil and heinous crimes. When she came forward to solve them, she was only helping the evildoer or becoming a scapegoat or cannon fodder. Realizing this, Yun Xiaoxin flew into a rage and naturally drew her sword to kill them. But then, the 4th time, the 5th time, the 6th time, I can't believe the hearts of the people in the martial world are so unfathomable. Eldest senior sister Yun Xiaoxin, who had encountered this many times, was indignant. Am I really so gullible? This is ridiculous. If her junior brothers and sisters knew about this, they would laugh at her to death. At the thought of this, Yun Xiaoxin felt a chill run down her spine. She absolutely could not let the second person know about this glorious history of hers. Absolutely not. A woman's voice calling for help came from the front. It must be another scoundrel bullying a woman. Without saying a word, Yun Xiaoxin rushed forward with righteous indignation and drew her saber to help. She was a chivalrous woman who was willing to take revenge. A long time passed. Yun Xiuxin nodded and bowed, smiling at the two angry old men in front of her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know, that woman is a thief. This is really. I'm really sorry. I'll take responsibility for what I've done. I'll compensate you for your losses. Sigh, she had only wanted to get their gratitude, but in the end, all she got was complaints. It's so difficult to make a living in the martial world. There are too many liars. The bitterness in her heart grew stronger and stronger. It's said that there are many good people in the world, but why haven't I met many good people along the way? Instead, I've met one scoundrel, and scoundrel after scoundrel. Someone even tried to trick me and sell me into a brothel. Even though I'm extraordinarily beautiful, this behavior still deserves to die. The legendary martial world era hero could save a damsel in distress within a few steps, where fine wine was everywhere, and where there were friends everywhere, did not seem to exist. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that she had gained a lot of knowledge and experience along the way, as well as a lot of scheming. Sigh, I'll go back and practice as soon as the 2 months have passed. The martial world outside is too annoying, and I don't like it everywhere. With a calm face, Bai Yeshing pulled the sword out of the corpse in front of him. There are too many scoundrels like this in the martial world. If I don't kill them, I won't feel good, and if I don't kill them, how can I take revenge? Beside him was Lin Xiaoro, whose face was filled with admiration. Senior brother Bai is amazing. These villains can't hide from your sharp eyes at all. This is already the 7th wave. Junior sister Lin, when you travel the martial world, you must remember one thing first: there are no good people in the martial world. He must always carry this kind of vigilance when he roamed the Jianghu. Based on this premise, after careful screening, perhaps there would be 1 or 2 worthy friends out of 100. There would also be 1 or 2 who could be regarded as nodding acquaintances that could be made further. Don't take any chances. Otherwise, you'll be at a disadvantage. If there comes a day when you roam the martial world alone, you must remember what I said today. Lin Xiaoro looked impressed. You know so much, senior brother Bai. You must teach me more in the future, and I won't forget a single word, all right. With a cold face, Hu Xiaofan rushed out of Kangwu Union's main gate, bathed in blood and emanating a strong murderous aura. I'll be back, just you wait. Behind him was a series of Kangwu Union disciples. Catch him. We can't let that thief escape. He stole our sex treasure, the mysterious king tripod. On a small boat on a wide river. Sun Mingxiu was as gentle and elegant as usual, drinking with a man in green on the opposite side. Brotherly, we've been together for many days. As the saying goes, we've become old friends in an instant. We've been through life and death together, and we've always treated each other with sincerity. I hope Brotherly will take care of yourself, and we'll meet again someday. The man in green on the opposite side looked reluctant. Brother Sun, you should take care of yourself. We'll meet again in the martial world in the future, and we'll definitely drink and chat happily. If you're free, you must come to the Holy Soul Palace to visit me. Of course, of course. We'll meet again someday. We'll meet again someday. On the other side, in a beautiful garden, countless exotic flowers were competing with each other. Qing Jiejia and a beautiful woman in white both knelt on the ground. The heavens above, the earth below, disciple Qing Jiejia and sister Lian Fangfei are sworn sisters today. Although we're not willing to be born on the same day, I hope, sister. Sister. When you're free, you must come to the Holy West Palace. I'll definitely go. The martial world is dangerous and unpredictable. Take care of yourself, sister. The same goes for sister. Watch and be careful. I'll remember sister's help for the rest of my life. I won't dare to forget it. Sister, don't forget that there's another sister in the Holy West Palace. Sister, don't forget that there's another sister in the residence of 9 Supremes. Of course, I'll pay a visit next time. I'll pay my respects to the immortal-like sect leader Yun, and see how handsome he is. Hee hee, sister, don't joke around. Master is an immortal-like person. Naturally, he's not a common person. Lu Changman walked out of a village with a long saber in his hand, covered in blood. His sleeves hung down, and sticky blood dripped from time to time. The places he walked were full of red footprints, but none of them came from his own blood. Human traffickers should all be destroyed, they shouldn't exist in this world. This is the 9th human trafficker organization. I'm going to continue killing until the 2 months are up. Human traffickers, human kidnappers, all of them deserve to die, all of them. Yun Xiaoxin and the other top 10 disciples were not the only ones who were adventuring in the martial world. Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, and the others were not idle either. They had all chosen the direction where these disciples were going, doing their own things and practicing their martial skills while secretly watching these disciples. Ever since the residents of 9 Supremes officially advanced to a middle-class celestial luck banner, everyone could clearly feel that their cultivation speed was more than twice as fast as before. They had only been back in the residence of 9 Supremes for a little more than a month, but their cultivation base was about to break through the 4th-tier Saint King realm and reach the realm of Saint Emperor. In the past, when there were not many resources and the blessing of the celestial luck banner, even if they did their best and cultivated desperately, their progress was still limited, and they were still far behind their peers. It was inevitable that they would be discouraged. If it were not for this, Luo Dajiang and Zhang Luo, who were in love with each other in the past, would almost always hate each other. Now, with the blessing of the celestial luck banner and the many resources of the residents of 9 Supremes, they were surprised to find that their hard work in the past was not in vain. Instead, they had laid a stronger foundation than the disciples of those big sections. At this moment, these foundations were playing a role. If the cultivation speed of those geniuses in the residence of 9 Supremes was 1, then the progress of these people, who had been tempered and cultivated with the same aptitude, was at least 3. Everyone's hearts surged with emotions towards this common understanding. The road to rise was paved under their feet, and they no longer had to worry about moving forward. The others continued to cultivate their inherent cultivation methods, and there was no change in their state of mind. Only Shi Wuchen himself realized to his surprise that as his cultivation of the sword Dao improved and he went deeper into the sword realm, his emotions grew colder and colder. Even when he was in a life and death situation, he was still indifferent and had a heart of stone. This situation persisted until he was training with Yu Qingheng. When he saw Yu Qingheng being besieged, bathed in blood and on the brink of death, while he was still calmly watching from the sidelines, Shi Wuchen suddenly felt a sense of fear. That's my disciple. Why am I so calm when he died so soon? When did I become so indifferent? So heartless? I'm not indifferent or calm, I'm cold-blooded. Could it be that my cultivation has actually caused my blood to turn cold? Have I lost all my feelings? If that's the case, what's the point of my cultivation? Shi Wuchen's heart was greatly shaken, and he roared as he rushed out. However, he was still as calm as usual. He rescued his disciple from the siege and quickly left the area to treat his disciple's injuries. Then, he turned to think about his current state. Have I taken the wrong path in my swordsmanship? The sword art should also be guarded. What I need to do now is to get my feelings back. Shi Wuchen stood on the top of the mountain for a long time, a full day and a night. During this time, he did not know what he was thinking. No one knew his psychological journey during this time. But when he woke up, he suddenly stabbed his sword into his dantian without hesitation. I don't need such a heartless and cold-blooded sword heart. 8. Chapter 1188. Pooh. Shi Wuchen's face was ashen as he spat out a mouthful of blood. He could feel that his sword heart that had been cultivated to the point of being translucent like glass had shattered and ceased to exist. But at the same time, he felt a sense of joy as if he had been reborn. The sword in his hand seemed to be filled with warmth at this moment, trembling slightly in his hand. Shi Wuchen looked at his sword with a pale face and murmured, "Do you think that I'm doing the right thing?" He laughed and suddenly said loudly, "Regardless of whether this is right or wrong, even if it is wrong, I will not regret it." It was on this day that the residents of 9 Supreme 2nd Supreme, revered Sword Shi Wuchen, destroyed his own sword heart and sword Dao, cultivating the path of swordsmanship and creating a new guardian sword Dao. And it was from this very day onwards that the Xianhuang world gained yet another grandmaster level being in the truest sense of the word. Carrying on from the past, the Xianhuang world created a new saying for the sword Dao. Shi Wuchen. All along, the Dao of the sword had been the main path of cultivation in the entire Xianhuang world. It was an eternal theme. Sword Dao was merciless. Heartless swordsman. This was a fact that was universally acknowledged. Very few people questioned the truth of this point. Even though there were far too many outstanding geniuses and prodigies of the sword who were unable to continue on this mainstream Grand Dao and died prematurely on it, there were still even more who advanced wave after wave without wavering in their determination. Even if he walked to the end and paid so much on the path of the sword, it was still difficult to reach the true path. In the end, he became a sword demon, a sword fanatic, but his infatuation did not change, and he did not regret becoming a sword demon. He only cared about the sword Dao, and he was stubborn. Outsiders might sigh at the fate of these people, but they would never doubt the sword Dao they pursued, especially the sacrifices and efforts they made for the sword Dao. Those were all things that could not be erased. Initially, Shi Wuchen was like that as well. He had no other choice but to give his entire heart and soul to his sword. He was infatuated with the sword, devoted to the sword, and treated the sword as his master. Everything in the world, everything in this world, was under the sword. It was as if, other than the sword, there was nothing else. It was because of this infatuation, this sincerity, and this stubbornness that Shi Wuchen had gradually grasped the pinnacle of swordsmanship. However, after he had gotten started and walked for a period of time, he discovered the flaw of this path. If he continued like this, he would continue to grow stronger. Regardless of whether it was his cultivation or battle prowess, his heart would also become cold and hard. Until his heart became as cold as iron, his entire person would be refined into a sword, emotionless, without love, and without righteousness. Well, to put it more accurately, there was no longer any warmth in his heart. In other words, there was nothing else in his heart other than his sword. If it had been the Shi Wuchen of the past, he would not have hesitated at all. So what if he was heartless and heartless? It did not matter. In this world, there was nothing worth worrying about. But now, Shi Wuchen realized that he couldn't bear to let it go, and couldn't ignore it. My whole group of brothers, my whole group of disciples. As the number 2 figure of a super sect, I've been alone for half my life. I've finally obtained everything that I've dreamed of the most, and now I'm supposed to give it all up. Time, he of. Because of this mentality, after weighing the pros and cons, Shi Wuchen resolutely gave up on the path of emotionless swordsmanship that he was halfway through. He was afraid. He was afraid that he would lose the things that he had worked so hard to obtain. He did not want to lose these things that he had once thought he would never be able to obtain. Swordsmanship is all-encompassing. I was able to walk this path of emotionlessness back then. Now, it's not impossible for me to walk another path of affection. Even if there is no path ahead and it's rugged and difficult to walk, I will forge my own path. My path will no longer be the path of emotionless swordsmanship, but the path of the sword of protection. Shi Wuchen brought his disciple along on the journey back. He had been gravely injured along the way, and his cultivation base had been reduced to less than a tenth of what it was, but his heart was inexplicably relaxed and unburdened. It was as if the cultivation base that he had crippled was not that important. At least, it was not as important as the sense of relief that came from his heart. Shi Wuchen could even feel that there was a sword hum ringing in his dantian. When Yin Yang returned, it was the second day of Shi Wuchen's closed-door cultivation, and he had passed by him perfectly. In spite of this, Yin Yang's first reaction when he found out about the incident was, great. This time, Shi Wuchen was the one who had comprehended it. No matter how far Shi Wuchen could go in the future, At least Yun Yang felt an unusual warmth in his heart right now. Shi Wuchen had finally made a choice between his ability and his family. Not to mention anything else, just this choice alone made it worthwhile for the brothers to gather in the mortal world and get along with each other. Just as Yun Yang arrived at the residence of 9 Supremes and took a quick glance around, he immediately noticed that the place had undergone a drastic change once again. There was almost no one in the residence as far as his eyes could see. In spite of this, the few fields were filled to the brim with people. Sensing the aura, Ping Xiaoyi and Guo Nuanyang, the 2 permanent members who had stayed behind, rushed over at once. "Boss, it's time to consider recruiting more disciples," Ping Xiaoyi said with an excited smile. The residence of 9 Supremes had grown from nothing to the scale it was today. Ping Xiaoyi felt that he now had a goal in life. Especially when he saw so many genius disciples emerging from the ranks of the disciples, Ping Xiaoyi felt that the vitality was boundless and that there was much to be done. His home was getting better and his days were getting better. The sense of accomplishment was naturally growing with each passing day. It's time to start recruiting new disciples. Yin Yang mused and said, "Each peak can take in 50 true disciples, 200 inner disciples, and 500 outer disciples according to the peak's actual situation. The rest can be considered as menial disciples." "Do we need to divide them into generations of disciples?" asked Guo Nuanyang. "There's no need. This batch of disciples will still be the residence of 9 Supremes' first-generation disciples, but there's a time limit for teaching and answering questions. It can't be compared to direct disciples. The outer disciples after that can be taught by seed disciples and true disciples on behalf of their masters." Ping Xiaoyi and Guo Nuanyang agreed to it one after another. The matter was settled. "Next, it's your turn to recruit more disciples. The basic scale will be the same as ours. On this basis, you can give guidance as you wish if there's anyone that catches your eye." Yin Yang rolled his eyes. "Both of you are no different from Shi Wuchen and the rest to me. It's the same for the residents of 9 Supremes as well. Therefore, your disciples will have to go through the assessment and participate in the martial contest. The entire sect will be the same, there will be no exceptions. If this assignment had been given to other sects, even if the person involved didn't show it on the surface, he would definitely be overjoyed. This was a transfer of great authority. But when Guo Ping heard this, their expressions turned bitter. "Boss, what we specialize in isn't the same as what you do. It's fine for us to give a few pointers, but when it comes to focusing on teaching disciples, firstly, the 2 of them specialized in different areas, and secondly, they were equally lazy. For the sake of freedom, to not care about anything, they did not even fight for the position of the 9 peak masters. They had always been lazing around, so their instinctive reaction was to push the responsibility away when Yin Yang suddenly pinned it on them. I don't care about that, it's not the main point. You're all from the 10 finest talents, you can't be biased. It's your business to be at the bottom every day anyway. I'll just take it as watching." With a wave of his hand, Yin Yang had settled the matter with a single blow. Both of them were dumbfounded. "It's true that it's our business to be at the bottom every day, but we want our pride as well. We can't afford to be embarrassed like this. You can say whatever you want, but are we going to wash our faces with tears every day? Has there been any change in our sect during this period of time? Has there been any unforeseen events?" Yin Yang walked in as he spoke. "There have been a lot of changes, a lot more." Guo Nuanyang introduced with a smile. Ever since that day when the middle-class celestial luck banner suddenly flew over, after the detailed introduction, he continued, "Jiang Luoluo and her master, Gan Tianyan, are still guests in our residence. Boss, you don't know that Senior Gan is rather jealous. From what I see, she can't wait to take all of our disciples away. It's a pity that none of them are willing to go with her." "Is that so?" Yin Yang's eyes shone. As he spoke, 2 slender silhouettes were already approaching him. It was Gan Tianyan and Jiang Luoluo. Sect leader Yun is finally back. Since we parted that day, your demeanor seems to have grown even more and your cultivation base has improved. Congratulations, congratulations. Gan Tianyan had long sensed Yun Yang's return and had been itching to come and talk to Yun Yang about his disciples, but it was only right to let Yun Yang understand his sex situation first. Therefore, he had been holding it in until now and had only come when he could no longer hold it in. Once he saw Yun Yang, he was shocked. It had only been a short period of time since they parted, but Yun Yang's cultivation base had improved tremendously. The phrase, 1,000 miles in a day, was not enough to describe the progress of his cultivation base. It was terrifying. Senior, you're the one who's shining. Yun Yang laughed. Sect leader Yun, this old one has come to discuss something with you. Gan Tianyan had been holding back his words for more than a month. Now that he had finally met the highest authority of the residents of 9 Supremes, how could he hold it in any longer? He spoke his mind and went straight to the topic. Then, Senior, please. Let's talk as we walk. Yun Yang walked towards his main hall. Regarding your residence's disciples. Sect leader Yun, what do you plan to do? Gan Tianyan went straight to the point. Your residence has more than 14,000 disciples. Sect leader Yun, forgive this old one for being disrespectful, but it's obviously far from enough to train so many disciples with just the manpower of your residence's upper echelon. Yun Yang nodded. Senior is frank. This is indeed my residence's current biggest shortcoming. Gan Tianyan smiled and said, since sect leader Yun doesn't deny it, I'll say one more thing. Your residence's disciples are all outstanding and gifted. If they can't receive the appropriate guidance because of this, it's a waste of God's gift and a pearl covered in dust. Yun Yang smiled faintly and said calmly, it's indeed a bit of a pity. I wonder what senior can teach me. Gan Tianyan said with a face full of pity, Sect leader Yun, please don't blame this old one for talking too much. It's true that many of your residence's disciples are talented and beautiful. It's definitely not enough to rely on the 9 supreme elders of the residence of 9 supremes. It's bound to cause many disciples to be unable to receive teachings that match their talents. It's a waste of time. Sect leader, you're also an expert in cultivation. You should know that once you miss these few years of foundation building, in the future. Yun Yang chuckled. Senior, please speak your mind. I won't be offended. Gan Tianyan smiled and said, Sect leader Yun, you're a straightforward person, so I won't beat around the bush. This is my plan. Since it's difficult for your residents to train so many disciples, I wonder if you can allocate some of them to the Phoenix Cry sect. Yun Yang thought about it and said faintly, in terms of principle, no sect will give away the disciples that they've already recruited. At least, the residents of 9 Supreme's disciples are not allowed to leave. The reason why we've trained dozens of them first is not only to train them, but also to save them. When the time is right, these disciples who have entered the sect earlier can be taught on behalf of their masters. Now, there are already 60 to 70 disciples who can fulfill this duty. As for the new disciples that we're going to recruit, although there are thousands of them, if they're spread out, there'll only be dozens of them for each of the first-generation disciples. As long as they're diligent, one person can manage and teach 60 to 70 people or even 100 people. Even if mistakes are inevitable, it won't be a big problem. The foundation stage is important, but as long as the theory is explained clearly and the resources allocated can keep up, there'll be opportunities for improvement with individual effort. They don't necessarily need the guidance of famous teachers or the teachings of experts. Because the cultivation method of a sect is the same. Yun Yang smiled calmly. Gan Tianyan was a little dumbfounded by Yun Yang's words. Indeed, Yun Yang's theory was feasible. Although the guidance and training of famous teachers were important, the training of the foundation stage was almost the same. For example, Gan Tianyan dared not say that he was much better than Yun Yang, Shi Wuchen, or even Yun Xiuxin. Instead, the resources allocated were the most important, and the residence of 9 Supremes was obviously more than enough. Moreover, Gan Tianyen had seen that these children of the residents of Nine Supremes did not need to be managed at all during this period of time. As long as they were given the cultivation method, every single one of them would be self-aware and self-reliant. They would eagerly and desperately cultivate, working hard to improve. There was no need for the so-called supervision at all. They cherished the cultivation opportunity they had more than ordinary cultivators. In such an environment, the so-called training and cultivation really did not have much meaning. Among the 60 to 70 disciples, there would be an obvious competitive mechanism, each more hard-working and desperate than the other. If this went on, not only would it be feasible, it would be very feasible. Moreover, Yin Yang and the other higher-ups would be more relaxed because of this model. They would definitely be more relaxed than they were now. Thinking of this, Gan Tianyen could not help feeling a little lost. Before Yin Yang came back, Guanuanyang and Ping Xiaoyi's explanation was already rather flexible. As long as the target disciples are willing, you can take as many as you can. Therefore, Gan Tianyen had high hopes for this conversation with Yin Yang. Who would have thought that Yin Yang's return would seal the last remaining gap? How could he explain this? Could his plan fall through just like that? Was it all for naught? Jiang Luoluo, who had been following them with her head lowered, had not spoken a word throughout the entire journey. Now, however, she almost burst out laughing, covering her mouth quickly as her eyes darted about. All the words that Gan Tianyen had prepared were swallowed back by Yin Yang's words. For a moment, she did not know what to say. She stammered, but. Chapter 1189. For a moment, Gan Tianyen was ashamed and angry from being fooled. She looked at Yin Yang, speechless. Yin Yang said with a smile, however, since Senior Gan has spoken, I have to give you face. Our families are in-laws, so of course, we are different. As long as the goodies are kept within the family, it's fine. As his voice trailed off, Yin Yang fell into deep thought and did not speak for a long time. Gan Tianyen's eyes lit up. She knew that Yin Yang had relented not only because the matter had changed, but because it was definitely feasible. Yin Yang thought for a moment and said in a low voice, we can do this. Senior is my sister-in-law's master, we are not outsiders, so of course we have to give you face. However, your sect and this residence are not the same sect after all. The residence of Nine Supremes has just been established, and there are many things waiting to be done. How about this? What do you think the Phoenix Cry sect has to exchange with us? Exchange? Gan Tianyen's eyes widened. Does this mean that you want me to buy it? Yin Yang smiled amiably. Senior, please don't misunderstand. This junior doesn't mean that, and I'm not a merchant. Isn't it cliché to use money with our relationship? What our sect needs is just a little bit of sincerity. Whether it's rare metals, treasures of heaven and earth, or cultivation methods and arcane manuals, all of these are fine. Your sect can do whatever you want. He smiled sheepishly and sighed again. Your sect is one of the top 3 sects with middle-class celestial luck banners. Perhaps you look down on this junior's stinginess, but this is the current situation of our residence. We lack all of these things. Very much so. Gan Tianyen took a deep breath and swallowed it forcefully, saying, we do have all of these. Yin Yang replied, your sect can do whatever you want, but it's just a little bit of sincerity. Whatever? Sincerity? Gan Tianyen was immediately annoyed. Whatever? Can it really be whatever? If you're willing to give it to someone with just a little bit of sincerity, I'm afraid you'll have to find a better one. She lowered her head and thought for a while before saying, I wonder how many disciples sect leader Yun can give. Our sect has been established for a long time, I'm confident that we have some resource reserves. Yin Yang chuckled and waved his hand in a forthright manner, saying, Senior is a forthright man and straightforward. Including the top 10 disciples who are going to the flag, Senior only needs to call out to any of the disciples you fancy. Including the top 10 disciples who went to Celestial Luck Banner, Senior, feel free to call anyone you like. As long as they agree, we won't interfere. Even if Senior takes all the 14,000 disciples in our residence, I won't say anything. There were two words that almost slipped out of his mouth, F***ck. At the end of the day, the problem was back to square one. Voluntary? Moreover, before you came back, we didn't need to pay any price for this to be carried out. Now that you've come back, you've made a long speech, and you've even asked for this and that, and you've given me the same promise as before. Moreover, it's completely useless. Gan Tianyan stood up abruptly. His face was ashen as he gritted his teeth. Sect leader Yun, your generosity has really broadened my horizons. It's really eye-opening. Yin Yang said innocently, if Senior has any other thoughts, you can totally bring them up and say it in person. What's the harm in having an open and honest exchange? I've just returned to the residence. Perhaps there are some things that I'm not as familiar with as Senior. Gan Tianyan was furious, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Her emotions were on the verge of losing control. She suddenly recalled a junior sister in the sect who would mutter to herself through gritted teeth every time she was angry, so angry that my breasts hurt. Both of them hurt. Gan Tianyan, who used to be in a high position and whose status was only below the sect leader, had never experienced such a thing. Today, however, she truly understood the profound meaning of this phrase. It turned out that both of them could really hurt from anger. The innocent expression on Yun Yang's face made Gan Tianyan feel like she was about to explode from anger. Gan Tianyan panted heavily for a moment before she said coldly, Sect leader Yun, you don't have to play dumb. Before you came back, I've already tried for a long time. Those who are willing to go with me are few and far between. If that's not the case, why would I need to trouble sect leader Yun? Gan Tianyan had no choice but to swallow her anger. It was because the current batch of disciples in Yun Yang's residence of 9 Supremes were too outstanding. They were too talented. As long as there was a chance, she would not let it go. Yin Yang coughed awkwardly. I see. Well. Then, he said with a troubled expression, Senior Gan, I can understand your feelings, but it's true that the residence of 9 Supremes has many disciples, and it's also true that the teachers are insufficient. These are all true. However, if the disciples are unwilling to leave but the sect orders them to leave, it'll be a huge blow to the disciples' state of mind. How much effort will it take to make up for it later? Are you willing to take this risk? Are you willing to bear the consequences? If you're really willing, I can reluctantly do it. Gan Tianyan was speechless for a long while after Yun Yang said that. What Yun Yang had said was true. If the disciples were unwilling to leave, could the residents of 9 Supremes still chase them away by force? Their hearts were divided. Based on the sense of belonging the residents of 9 Supremes disciples had to the residents of 9 Supremes, if such a situation were to happen, the expelled disciples' state of mind would definitely be hard to maintain. Disciples who lacked a state of mind would have limited achievements in the future, no matter how gifted they were. There was no room for nurturing such disciples. Furthermore, if the residents of 9 Supremes really did so and did as the Phoenix Christ sect wanted, who else would be willing to join the residents of 9 Supremes in the future? Even the disciples could not be protected and were taken away just like that. There was no sense of security at all. If there were any other ways, they would never be willing to join such a sect. Is there no one in your sect that is not very valued, even if it's a disciple who might be eliminated? Gan Tianyan was melancholy. Yin Yang rolled his eyes. Not very valued? Might be eliminated? The residents of 9 Supremes had such disciples. There were a lot of them, and they were everywhere. Currently, none of the residents of 9 Supremes disciples received special attention. Everyone cultivated diligently on their own. It was precisely because of this that everyone's path was similar. At least, the starting point was the same, and there was no difference between them. Similarly, everyone's chances of being eliminated were the same, so everyone had the possibility of being eliminated. In other words, all the residents of Nine Supreme's disciples were not very valued, and all of them had the possibility of being eliminated. However, under the current spiritual chi of the residents of Nine Supremes, even the most useless of them could break through a few chakras. Moreover, these little fellows were all gifted. As long as they were given time, none of them would be useless. Under such a premise, as long as the person involved did not give up, it was not easy to figure out who would be eliminated in the end. Senior, you've been a guest in the residence of Nine Supremes for some time. I'm afraid you know more about the recent affairs of the residents of Nine Supremes than I do. Of course, you know the situation and mentality of these disciples better. Do you have to do that from us? Yin Yang rubbed the space between his brows, feeling a headache coming on. His meaning was clear: these are all our disciples. Do you Phoenix Cry sect have to take advantage of us? Do you have to bite a piece of meat? Can't we not bite? Hearing Yun Yang's words, Gan Tianyan was speechless, and his embarrassment was written all over his face. Yes, it was one thing that the residents of Nine Supremes did not have enough teachers, but why did they have to share their lack of teachers with their disciples? Moreover, there were many talented disciples. What kind of logic was this? Even if the Phoenix Cry sect was a prestigious sect, it could not be so overbearing. To put it more seriously, taking disciples by force was a serious matter of cutting off one's future and damaging one's foundation. No matter what, it was the Phoenix Cry sect's fault. However, Gan Tianyan was not reconciled to it. Under normal circumstances, the act of taking outstanding disciples by force was naturally not desirable. No matter how passionate one's thoughts were, few sects dared to take action. However, the residents of Nine Supremes had too many talented disciples, far exceeding the maximum training limit that the residents of Nine Supremes could currently train and cultivate. Moreover, Gan Tianyan did not intend to take those with the highest talent, which was why he had spoken. In fact, Gan Tianyan himself was puzzled. Where did the residents of Nine Supremes find so many talented disciples? The number of outstanding disciples in the residence of Nine Supremes was more than 14,000. Even if all the sects with celestial luck banners were included, the number would not be more than this. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. Over the years, the competition between the sects with celestial luck banners has become more intense. Disciples with good aptitude are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. What's more, the reason why the sects with celestial luck banners have such abundant spiritual chi is not without a price. The price of gathering such a massive amount of spiritual chi is to transfer all the spiritual chi from the nearby mortal lands. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth is constant, and once the spiritual chi of a region is highly concentrated in one place, the spiritual chi in a certain range around it will inevitably die out. Similarly, the probability of geniuses appearing in the mortal world, where the spiritual chi is thinner. Gan Tianyan heaved a long sigh. Even if he did not take into account the fact that the spiritual chi was thin, the probability of geniuses appearing in the mortal world was still minuscule. Basically, there would only be one in a few million people. Otherwise, how could there be the term genius? In recent years, it has become more and more difficult for the sects to find their successors. When I came to the residence of Nine Supremes this time, I was surprised to see the gathering of geniuses, all of whom are talented. It's really difficult for me to suppress my desire to cherish talents, which is why I'm so bold to ask. Now that sect leader Yun has many concerns and the truth is that you are in a dilemma, I won't force you. After all, it's not necessary to divide the disciples if there are too many talented disciples in the sect to teach them all. Gan Tianyan's eyes were filled with sadness as she sighed. Yin Yang observed his expression and felt that it was about time. He smiled and said, "Senior, don't be anxious. We can discuss this matter at length." Gan Tianyan asked in surprise. "What else can we discuss at length?" Yin Yang said, "Phoenix Cry sect has resources and many cultivation seniors, but it doesn't have many disciples that can be taught. Perhaps, it should be said that the number of talented disciples is very limited, while the residence of 9 Supremes has many disciples that can be taught. Although it's difficult for our disciples to transfer to your sect, it's not impossible for us to compromise and try to cooperate. Perhaps we can both get what we want. Compromise? Cooperation? How do you say? The teachers in Phoenix Christ sect who have free time can come to the residence of 9 Supremes to teach disciples. They can also bring back the disciples they like to teach. The only restriction is that they have to wait until the residence of 9 Supremes has chosen their inner disciples. Gan Tianyan's expression turned cold. Sect leader Yun, what a good plan. Is your so-called cooperation to let Phoenix Christ sect provide manpower and help the residents of 9 Supremes train their disciples in exchange for all the benefits? Yun Yang smiled and said, Senior, you are mistaken. The residents of 9 Supremes disciples will retain their identity, but when they are successful in their studies, they will have a chance to choose which sect they will belong to in the future. Gan Tianyan was dumbfounded. In other words, when they are successful in their studies and choose to become Phoenix Christ sect's disciples, they will only be Phoenix Christ sect's disciples. Similarly, if they still choose to be residents of 9 Supremes disciples, they will only be residents of 9 Supremes disciples. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang, who stood beside him, did not say a word as Yunyang finished his narration leisurely. Gan Tianyan snorted and said, What's the difference between this and before? If the disciples still choose to become disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes at that time, wouldn't all the efforts of the Phoenix Christ sect over the years be in vain? Well, to be more precise, it's all for the residents of 9 Supremes? Gan Tianyan was extremely fearful of this point. During this period of time, she had been troubled by the residents of 9 Supremes disciples' sense of identity towards the residents of 9 Supremes itself. If there were truly people who wavered, they would not have waited until today, they would have left with their people long ago. Yin Yang said faintly, This collaboration is meant to give your sect a chance. If the master-disciple bond that has been cultivated over the years can't change a person's mind, shouldn't it be the teacher's own reflection? What Senior said just now is a possibility. Perhaps, after many years, those disciples who have been nurtured will all choose to become disciples of Phoenix Christ sect to serve their master after they have grown up. Wouldn't that be a greater loss for the residents of 9 Supremes? There are pros and cons to this collaboration. Your sect has deployed a lot of manpower and resources, but in the process of cultivating these disciples, if they were in the residence of 9 Supremes, the spiritual chi and resources used for cultivation would all be provided by the residents of 9 Supremes. Now, Senior, do you still think that the residents of 9 Supremes would benefit from this collaboration? Gan Tianyan was stunned, lowering her head in thought. Yin Yang was right. It was impossible to erase the years of teacher-disciple relationship. If he was unable to influence the disciples' feelings, then it would really be the problem of the teacher. When the time came, it might be delusional to say that he could take all of them away, but it was still reasonable to take half of them away. Moreover, all the resources and spiritual chi of the venue would be provided by the residents of 9 Supremes. What she needed to contribute was only a few elites and a few cultivation methods. That was all. In this way, the situation was not only the residents of 9 Supremes getting all the benefits, it could almost be said that the Phoenix Christ sect was using the residents of 9 Supremes' resources to cultivate its own disciples. Don't forget, as long as the disciple cultivates our Phoenix Christ sect's cultivation method, he or she will use our Phoenix Christ sect's cultivation method when he or she attacks in the future. Isn't that the same as having the Phoenix Christ sect's imprint on their body? Gan Tianyan looked hesitant, but in fact, she had already agreed in her heart. She had even begun to plan who would come over in the future. She would not allow those who were not steady, hot-tempered, and those who were always weird. She would even skip those who were weak. She must choose those who were strong, absolutely reliable, and had a good temperament. After a while, Gan Tianyan said in a low voice, Sect leader Yun's proposal of cooperation is indeed worth discussing. However, this is a serious matter. I need to go back and discuss it with the sect leader and the few elders. Yun Yang laughed heartily and said, Of course. Of course. In fact, whether your sect agrees or not, it doesn't affect the relationship between our two sections. After all, with Luolua's sister-in-law here, the relationship between us is unbreakable. Gan Tianyan nodded slowly. Yin Yang's words were more realistic, but she still needed to go back and discuss the specific details. If she made a decision now, she would be suspected of overstepping her authority. Both parties exchanged a few more pleasantries. Gan Tianyan's emotions were getting more and more difficult to conceal. Soon, she bade farewell to Yun Yang and left the residence of 9 Supremes without stopping, returning to the Phoenix Cry sect in the night. It was more important to decide on this matter as soon as possible. Along the way, they chased after the clouds and broke through the fog, traveling at lightning speed. They traveled day and night in hopes of returning as soon as possible. Gan Tianyan pondered as she hurried back. There were a total of 17 to 18 Saint Kings and 3 Royal Saints in the sect. There should be at least 7 to 8 of them who could be sent out. 7 or 8 people, if each of them taught 30 disciples, then at least 200 disciples could be taught. As long as the master and the disciple got along well with each other, and the friendship was real, after a few years, when the disciple's body reached the initial level, wouldn't it mean that the Phoenix Cry sect suddenly had more than 200 talented disciples? As long as they had this foundation, it was not impossible for the Phoenix Cry sect to advance into the top 3 classes. It might even be possible for them to ascend to the palace level by then. One had to know that even a palace sect might not have 200 to 300 excellent disciples. Inside the residence of 9 Supremes, Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang looked at Yun Yang and stuttered, "Boss, what do you mean by this? Isn't it too risky?" From their point of view, if the Phoenix Cry sect were to take in disciples here, even if the disciples who were trained would still bear the title of the residence of 9 Supremes disciple for the time being, the situation would be very different after a few years. The gratitude of being a master was not just a saying, it was an emotion that could not be erased. If that was the case, it would be better to be poached away right now. If they were poached away now, the only thing that would be lost would be a few young fellows who had yet to grow up and were less determined. The loss would be negligible, but it would be a pity if they were poached away after they had grown up. It might even be a huge loss. Don't be so nervous. Yin Yang chuckled and comforted them. I've said it from the beginning. This is a collaboration. Of course, there are pros and cons. Even if the Phoenix Cry sect really poached away a few hundred people, it's only a few hundred people. We still have more than 10,000 on our side, the ones we lose will only be a fraction, there's no need to worry too much. Ping Xiaoyi said, "You're too optimistic. I'd better go and select the disciples quickly. I'll pick out those who are talented first. It's not advisable to sacrifice for others." "How can you do that?" Yin Yang said unhappily, "Since we're planning to facilitate the collaboration, we should show our goodwill and sincerity. What's the point of them coming if we're only going to leave them some useless people? We should show the greatest sincerity to our brother sects who have established a friendly relationship. We should open our hearts and let them feel ashamed." Guanuanyang was dumbfounded. Ping Xiaoyi was tongue-tied. Shuang had nothing to say. This sanctimonious and modest gentleman in front of us, is he really our boss? Where was the sky that was once 9 feet high? Where was the promise of plucking the feathers of a swallow? How could it be like this? Yin Yang said righteously, "My 2 brothers, one must be magnanimous as a person. Be magnanimous." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.